Ladies and gentlemen, it is episode 85 of the High Council, and we are back with a special guest tonight. We are joined by Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, hello. How are you doing tonight?
It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We also have Tom from Midnight's Edge.
Hello.
And my partner in crime, Mecha Random 42.
Hello.
So, folks, we are here to discuss the Washington Post article, which has been attacking the Fandom Menace, which is nothing new. We're here to talk about some of the leaks from episode 9, Duel of Fates, the movie that never was, because we have the man who discussed said leaks that blew up on the Reddit posts here tonight. And it's the Fandom Menace, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So, let's get started right away. You guys want to jump in with the Washington Post bullshit? Because it's the biggest piece of shit that's ever existed.
Well, you know what they say, no publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah.
Unless it's libel.
Yeah.
Well, I just like how I was labeled as the guy who wrote the anti-Last Jedi comic. I was like, that's not what my story is about, but thanks. So free publicity is any publicity, I guess. So
No, that was always my favorite line from J. Jonah Jameson, though. I resent that. Writing it's libel.
Yeah, slander is spoken in print, it's libel. I love that movie. So, Robert, what were your thoughts when you read this piece?
Well, I thought, you know, what's really interesting is what bothers me is the premise. I think, look, I am not a part of the Fandom Menace, but I watch your channels. And I think my interests and everybody's interests, all fan interests, are essentially the same. We want great stories with great characters. That's it. We want stories that seem true to themselves and that make sense, that don't insult our intelligence. You know, when you're following something for the better part of, I don't know, your entire life, if somebody then makes something that's subpar when you've already seen a version of it that isn't, it's frustrating. And when the interests in something change, Star Wars is a perfect example, and that's what this all stems from. Star Wars was really presided over by one man, by George Lucas. And I've always said that the prequel films are bad movies, but good Star Wars. I like the story that's being told in the prequels. I don't think it's particularly well told, but there's a lot of elements that I enjoy. And obviously the Star Wars, the original trilogy, means the world to me growing up with it. But when that IP is sold to a corporation, a publicly held corporation like Disney, a corporation like Disney, or any corporation, their interests are to sell a product, which is what movies are, indeed, of course, a product, to the most amount of people. So by definition, your interest is no longer making the greatest story with the greatest characters that you can. It's to sell your product to the most amount of people, which means that great storytelling is not first and foremost in your mind. And yet that's what made these stories popular in the first place, because when you first saw Star Wars, when it came out in 1977, no one had ever seen anything like that. It revolutionized the movies. It revolutionized blockbuster filmmaking. It revolutionized what science fiction films could look like on the big screen. And so that's the legacy that you have to live up to. And I think when you're not doing that, when you're giving us, I did not like Force Awakens at all. I thought it was a retread. How do you go from destroying the Death Star to killing the Emperor, liberating the galaxy, to the next movie? I know it was 30 years later, but when the another empire has risen up and everybody seems to be acting like an idiot, I mean, how is that something you're supposed to get behind? I know it made $2 billion, but still.
It doesn't mean it was any good. I was with you back then when our channel had 300 people. I thought that movie was bad from the minute I saw it, and I never really saw any integrity carry over into the Disney stuff. It was always, like you said, a product. It was just meant to get eyes on it, not to be any good.
Well, what's so interesting to me is if you look at the success that the MCU has had, and people sometimes forget now that the MCU began over at Paramount. I mean, Iron Man was first a Paramount film.
Yep.
And, you had a a guy in Kevin Feige who worked his way up. He had an internship. He worked for Richard Donner, who had made Superman the movie on the Warner Brothers lot, and he worked his way up. And then he was a producer or worked on 13 different Marvel films before the MCU. The X-Men movies, Daredevil, Elektra, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man. I mean, some were much better than others, but he honed his craft and he understood. He learned because he made 13 of them and saw what worked and what didn't before he jumped into Iron Man, and he took everything he knew. And what he would do is he found a filmmaker like Jon Favreau and all the other filmmakers that he could collaborate with. And he knows you have to have great creatives in addition to having a corporate or a studio like the Marvel Studios oversight in order to create something that works and honors what you're trying to do. And I think what's really interesting is that I am not a detractor of Kathleen Kennedy's. I've admired her for years, and she's worked with some of the best filmmakers in the business. But one of the things that I don't think she's had to do is a great producer is there to fulfill to give a director all the tools and the talent that they need to realize the vision of the property. And I think she was used to dealing with real visionaries, whether it was Robert Zemeckis, whether it's David Fincher, whether it's Martin Scorsese, whether it's Steven Spielberg. She worked with some of the best directors that we have. And then when she's put in charge of Lucasfilm, she suddenly then was having to work with people that might not have been as good or had that much experience. And it became, she's not somebody who necessarily was crafting stories. And I think and then you're dealing with what Disney wants, what Disney expects for their $4 billion. And when people are seeing decisions that are made that are supposed to appeal to the lowest common denominator across the greatest number of demographics, you're not getting, no one's saying, I want to make the best story. They're like, how can we sell this product to the most people? And when we all fell in love with stories, when we're not getting good stories, that's what ends up pissing everybody off, especially the fan base. And this to answer your question, I really, the fact that it was talking about a right-wing troll problem, I found rather offensive, because that is such a mischaracterization, I think, of the fan community at large. Because the fan community is why there were no Star Wars fans before Star Wars came out. It had to create Star Wars fans. And these things have endured because as they've come around after year, decade after decade, they've continued to create fans with the material that's been put out. I mean, the EU books, very cool. The video games, I remember getting Shadows of the Empire, and that was extending the mythology. That was sort of a transmedia event with a novel and a video game and toys and all of that. You could always get excited about Star Wars. And it's been very interesting to see. I mean, as much as I didn't like what was done with the special editions, but when Disney took over, it just became the cornerstone of this of an empire that no longer was concentrating on the foundation, which is great stories well told. It now became, how do we maximize this product? And I don't blame them for that, but all you have to do is make great movies, make great entertainment that satisfies the very thing that you bought. If you're going to buy Star Wars, then make great Star Wars. And that's not what we've been getting.
No, and I look at this article, it's just more excuses. I mean, post Last Jedi 2018, we got excuse articles after excuse articles from places like Forbes, Slash Film. Every reputable, I'm using quotation marks, or corporately owned website always had, a defense piece on this. And it makes me laugh, though, that we're over 2 years removed from The Last Jedi, and they're still going for this. I mean, Tom, you were there from the beginning. You remember we were bots, we were trolls, we were this, we were that. We're always these different things. And it keeps coming back. It's cyclical. It's like the conversation about anyone that dislikes it has to be right wing. It's funny, though. They want to, in this piece, they talk about how it's all angry white dudes. It's like, well, what about Jesse? What about Anna? What about Mecca? What about these people who are women that don't like this movie either? The argument from this writer, it falls in on itself because this woman's not a Star Wars fan. She's looking for something to get clicked. She's not invested. We know our shit. We're part of we're fans first. So this woman's just looking for, I don't know, something, but I don't think she, has hit the nail on the head at all.
Well, this comes out of the playbook of Ghostbusters 2016.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is straight out of that
It's
playbook.
the same stuff. And, well, yeah, to elaborate on the other, we were Russian bots for how long? Until we, found that, no, like it's 3 accounts that they think are Russian bots. So we cracked the crap out of that one. That was a year ago. I remember that one.
Yeah, then there was Kelly Marie Tran and Daisy Ridley.
Yeah, and we found the people who originated those rumors, and they've never even acknowledged and said, yes, I deleted my account because of blah. None of them do. They always avoid the questions. And in fact, with Daisy Ridley, she's even gone on record saying, no, I just don't have time for it.
And even Kelly Marie Tran said a similar thing, but then even the last time she was asked about it and pushed, she said, yeah, but it was also because of this mentality that I was brought up in this world that I wasn't good enough and I wasn't good enough for Hollywood. And
yeah, she was famous overnight from working an office job. And that's why she went to therapy. So.
Yeah, so she said, and she never once said it had anything to do with any fans or backlash against her character or
no, and you
like
can't
that.
find any of it. And I can go in and find 20 accounts of where I've gotten death threats personally that are, because there's articles out there with screenshots. And there, you would think that if something actually happened, somebody would have written an article about it other than just these in passing. Oh, and then this thing happened, like it's fact. But this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of this yellow journalism. We're seeing a lot of lazy journalism. And like what Bethany, with all those teeth, had said, like lying right through them, is the same narrative that we're all a bunch of, right-wing, alt-right trolls, this and that. Like, okay, you have 2 people who had admitted, because they have very large channels, you have 2 people who actually gone on record and admitting to voting for the Orange Man, and that's their right, and that's their prerogative. And I am liberal enough not to hate them for it and not to jump on their ass like a lot of these NPC lefties and stuff. That's not even the point of, it's not a right or left thing. We just want good Star Wars. We don't want to be talked down to. We don't want to be preached to. We want escapism from this stuff so that I can clear my head and get away from it and actually make an informed decision. But now all we hear is and why did you vote for this? Because I didn't, and it's just ridiculous.
Well,
go
ahead.
Oh, you go ahead.
Well, this article says the rise of Skywalker invites the perception that it is made with conservative, white, and male audiences in mind. And I'm like, what? I mean, that's
They wanted Reylo?
Star Wars. The original Star Wars is one of the most chaste. I mean, it's not exactly a known for its racial demographics and inclusion. The first Star Wars is very white. But again, at the time, nobody was really thinking that. I mean, the reason Peter Cushing is in it is that Peter Cushing comes out of a tradition of Hammer films. He was Dr. Frankenstein. He was in movies with Christopher Lee. He's a British actor that embodies menace. When the movie was made in 1977 at the time, that's why they got him. They cast actors. It's such a strange thing now that this idea that is Emperor Palpatine now supposed to be considered an alt-right figure? That I don't understand what she's trying to.
Well, what they're trying to say is, and this is what my biggest problem with it is they're trying to say that we like the Rise of Skywalker. First of all, that's the first misconception.
Nobody likes.
There's probably a good 80 to 90% of the people within the Fandom Menace didn't really care for the film. Now, granted, you'll get some that'll say, oh yeah, it was much more watchable than The Last Jedi or more enjoyable than The Last Jedi. That's not saying much, though. Right. So going back to that, you still have this problem of, well, there's nobody who's really out there campaigning and saying, yes, we finally got the movie we asked for. If anything, what we're about to get to after this and talk about is, no, we really didn't get the movie we asked for, and we probably could have. But that's up for interpretation when we get to the script. This, though, is just like, come on, seriously. And then you get to the alt-right crap again. First of all, the only person who's going to get upset by calling them a Trump lover is somebody who doesn't love Trump. So it makes no sense to go after somebody expecting that to be some kind of, badge of dishonor. I mean, for example, the people within the Fandom Menace that we know are pro-Trump, for example, like Jeremy. If you go and call him a Trump lover, that's not going to insult him. He's just going to be like, yeah, and so it's like, first of all, that whole thing of trying to like call somebody a name by calling or make it feel like you're something, like less of a human being because you are something is just nonsense, because the only people you're going to affect are the people that don't like Trump. And they're just going to say, now, wait a minute, you're discounting my feelings, and I'm not an alt-right person. How can I be this? And I don't like the movie anyway. It's just, again, this blanket generalization to try and paint us as some kind of hate group. And I brought up a point that I think this has more to do with trying to get a lot of us off of YouTube, because they don't name names in this article, but there's several people, Jeff included, who are referenced in this.
Well, it's not going to work. I'm just letting this.
No, I'm just saying that I
don't
think that this isn't them setting up a narrative and an idea that, we're some kind of hate group. Don't think that's not the case.
But what I find interesting about all of this is it doesn't get back to the core thing that we're all talking about, which is, why isn't Star Wars great? I mean, you can talk about alt-right all you want, but really what this is all about is, why aren't we getting great movies? I mean, if you look at whether you liked, say, Infinity War and Endgame, I did. I mean, as a comic book fan, as a comic book reader my whole life, I never thought I was going to get ever an Avengers movie, much less movies like Infinity War and Endgame that embrace the Marvel Comics medium to such a degree. And for me, I'm like, wow, who would have thought even 10 years ago we would see something like this when Iron Man 1 started? And I'm thinking, with all of the great entertainment that's out there today, why is Star Wars not cutting it? Why is Star Wars not delivering the goods? And it's not because I'm a middle-aged man with one foot in his grave. It's just that I like good movies. I like good science fiction. I read a lot of books. And I don't understand why Star Wars isn't as good as, say, Lord of the Rings. Why don't they take the time? Why don't they craft a story if they know they're going to make 3 movies? Why don't they sit down and get these scripts in order before they start shooting the first one? We saw it worked. I mean, I know the books existed. I know Lord of the Rings existed, but they made all those movies. They started shooting all 3 at one time. And look how that turned out. Why isn't Star Wars afforded the same kind of creative beginning? And that's what I think everybody objects to. When it comes right down to it, if we had great Star Wars movies, everybody would be happy.
Yeah. And I think the Marvel comparison is great because they're both owned by the same company.
And that's why it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I always think those guys over at Marvel, now whether you like their movies or not, I think it's pretty apparent how much care and thought and planning. Sure, they didn't plan 10 years ahead, but they know what they're doing. And they're really, whether you loved it or not, the fact is ultimately 23 movies in the Infinity War saga average out to $1 billion each. And it's amazing that they made, after Iron Man 1, they made Thor and Asgard and Odin and Loki. Those characters exist in the same universe as Iron Man, and then bringing Captain America, where you're telling a World War II period piece and the birth of Captain America, and you make all 3 of those things work together. If you think about it, and then the Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Strange and now Black Widow, I mean, all of the disparate elements, and they made you believe, and they piled one layer of fantasy upon another layer to the point where you're time traveling and Thanos is throwing moons at people, and you buy it all and people love it. And you ask yourself, because they took their time, paid attention, and there was synergy between the studio, being Marvel, and the filmmakers. Sometimes Edgar Wright obviously didn't get to make the Ant-Man movie he wanted to make, but even Ant-Man, those movies worked well. And you wonder, why is it that they took the time there, and yet Star Wars has been floundering around? Why?
I have part of an answer, but I know you disagree on part of it, Robert, and that's fine. With all due respect, I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy is in the wrong position. She was not equipped for this type of role. She was not ready to be a Kevin Feige, and bringing her expertise working with big name directors to this didn't work out for her. She brought in a bunch of people, and she's at this point now fired more people than she's hired in reality, if you look at it. And you know, when you let Solo go 80 days before replacing Lord and Miller, when you know there's a problem, when you have the issues they had at the end of Rogue One, and God, look at what happened with the Rise of Skywalker. That was the big, I mean, it will go down as a bigger mess than the Justice League, guaranteed. When we go look back on it in history. I mean, and really, I feel like she was the wrong person for the job. She did not protect George's interest. She did not protect the interest of the Star Wars fans. She wanted to get guys like Rian Johnson in there who had a similar agenda to hers and wanted to push that all over Star Wars. And that's another thing about this article, going back to the article I didn't like, is they're like, oh, this is, you know, the right wing, blah, 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 Star Wars. How is that so? When every other scene it's, well, we would have done better if you were with us, Ray. Where were you? We needed you. And you're the bestest. You know, and it's all this kind of crap throughout the entire movie up till the very end where she literally steals everything she has from every white man she's known.
See,
I don't
Bethany's
understand.
just obsessed with Trump. She's just so Bethany Laciana is so obsessed with Trump. That's why she has to write about him all the time.
Now, I don't know
This
if
is
Dave
why.
Filoni would have been the right guy. I doubt it. My guess would have been the better choices would have been like Favreau, or if you could have gotten and spread Feige enough, but that didn't work out well when you did that with Lasseter. When you brought him in and spread him over Pixar and Disney animation, it made Pixar suffer and it lifted Disney animation up, but that's just because it was that bad at that point. So, I mean, you had this problem where you basically spread him like peanut butter all over Disney, and you'd have the same problem here if you probably did it with Kevin Feige. So maybe Jon Favreau or somebody like that who had a better vision. See, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy had a vision for what this was supposed to be. All she was trying to do is make Bob Iger happy in the end, which is technically her job. So right. I can't argue with you there on that point. But I just don't think she was equipped for this. She's never had this kind of a situation in her career. Closest thing she's had to it is the Indiana Jones franchise, really. And then what is she really adding to the pot? I mean, that's all George and Steven there, really, when you look at it. They're the ones who are the creative force behind it. So I really just don't think she had the chops to do this. I mean, and again, I with all due respect, that's the only thing you and I think disagree on, unless you've kind of changed your mind in recent weeks with the way things have been going. I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, look, the job is different. Heading up a studio, heading Lucasfilm is a different job than producing movies per se. But I think, you know, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy was particularly a fan necessarily of Star Wars. And look, when you're making movies, being a fan is one thing, but you really have to know how to make movies. And she certainly knows how to make movies. But the thing about Star Wars is so much of it, and the reason people love it is because of the characters and because of the universe. And if you're not really well-versed in all of that, if you don't love it, I mean, Kevin Feige loves Marvel. He loves it. And he eats, sleeps, and breathes it. He was a fan as a kid. He grew up, and now he has keys to the kingdom, but he also trained. He basically apprenticed on 13 movies. How do you make a Marvel movie? And he got to see what works and what didn't. And then he's like, I've got it. Now I know. My entire life, I've been in preparation for this, and luckily I was in a position. I worked my way up from an internship at Richard Donner's company. I was working for Marvel. I watched 13 movies being made, and he knows. I mean, there's not many people, by the way, ever in the history of Hollywood who were able to sort of train and figure out a franchise like this and make it work. And it shows when you have somebody who's knowledgeable and also loves that. You need both. You need somebody that's a knowledgeable film producer who also happens to love the franchise that they're in charge of. We've never really seen that. I think Kevin Feige is one of the only people. Certainly Rick Berman had no affinity for Star Trek when he took over, when he started working with Gene Roddenberry in 1986 on Next Generation, you know, and Kevin Feige is unique. And what Star Wars needs is somebody like that. I mean, Dave Filoni had never made live action.
Right. I'm
films.
not saying he's necessarily the right guy, but
he's great for, and judging, he judging by his episodes of Mandalorian, he's got some work to do. But that's a very different thing. Making animation is a very different thing. But I think what Star Wars needs is a creative, visionary producer that's also very hands-on in terms of crafting.
Well, it really needs somebody, like a Jon Favreau or Peter Jackson, somebody like that. But I think what I was kind of wondering, Robert, is maybe your tune might have changed when she made that asinine comment about, well, we don't have, 800-page novels and hundreds of comic books to pull from, which I think was a crack at Feige, to be honest with you, because I don't think she thought that comment through before she said it.
Right. I also think, but again, I think that comment was about when you're trying to create something. See, the thing is, what I've tried to explain to people too is, in Hollywood, all of these ancillary property, all of this ancillary stuff, like comic books, like novelization or tie-in novels, nobody in Hollywood takes those seriously, which is sort of unique that the Picard, Kurtzman and Orci did a countdown comic book for Star Trek 09, and they've done a countdown comic book for Picard, so they've utilized that. But there isn't an understanding that all of this material is out there. I mean, people know it's out there, but they don't take it seriously. And it's really too bad, because there has been some incredible franchise material that has been done in other mediums that is ripe to be adapted for film and television that nobody seems to look at. Whether it's, I don't know why they never adapted the Alien versus Predator comic that Dark Horse put out, the first one, which is really, really good. And instead we get things that are kind of silly. Sorry, my dog's barking.
Oh, you're fine. I wanted to ask you, since you were talking about Marvel, do you think they're going to continue the momentum with Black Widow moving forward? Do you think that MCU will cool down?
I'm curious. I think what's going to have to happen if the movies, I think Black Widow looks pretty great. I mean, I love spy thrillers, and I've always liked that character in the comics. It really depends. I mean, we're going to know it. I'm very curious to see what they're going to be doing with that franchise. If the movie's good, I think it shows that Marvel can move out beyond the Infinity Saga and start. They're going to have to do what they've always done. They're going to have to do different things. And Black Widow is going to be very telling, but I'm most excited and I'm most curious about the Eternals, because the Eternals has the kind of 1,000 years Middle Earth history. They've talked about how they're going to cover a long time, like a millennia in that film. And those characters, very Kirby-esque. I mean, they were created by Jack Kirby, but to see what they're going to do, I think is going to point the way. We'll know where Marvel is going after that. And I'm curious to see where they're going to go. But yeah, I think that Marvel, I really don't know if the fans are the fans. I mean, we've had over 10 years of Marvel movies. I still love them, but I don't know. Am I still going to like them? I'm most excited for Dune. Which is one of my favorite science.
I've been hearing some good shit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, look at what we're getting. I never thought I would see Carnival Row. I love that script when I first read it almost 20 years ago, and it gets turned into a cool series. I never thought we'd live in a land where we would get a Dark Crystal series. I mean, Dark Crystal came out in 1982, and it's not like it was the most beloved franchise property of all, and yet Dark Crystal Age of Resistance was amazing. I never would have thought that.
That was good.
Yeah, and you look at it and go, who would have seen that coming? But the people, the writing staff that they had working on that show, they all love that property, and they took a movie that was a little, it was not exactly the most rousing success, and they took that mythology. I mean, it's so carefully constructed, the Age of Resistance series. So much thought went into that. The writing was smart. When I see something like Dark Crystal get remade as Age of Resistance, and it's really good, I'm like, why is it that Star Wars doesn't have this kind of writing?
Or Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai is another great example of bringing back a franchise, 35-year-old franchise that people loved, 3.5 decades ago, and you bring it back and you show such respect and reverence for the characters and the storylines. I mean, who would have thought that show could have been good? And it's great. Even Creed. Ryan Coogler, I'm always talking about Creed, how the 6th Rocky sequel, Who would have thought that would have been good? Ryan Coogler comes along. He creates new characters in Adonis Creed that are canonical, and yet he also shows the proper respect to Stallone and gives him the best role since the original, probably.
I actually like Creed 2 more.
Well, you know, if that was something he did, and if you get a movie like Creed, I mean, Rocky predates Star Wars, and when you get a movie like Creed and it's as good as it is, you have to ask yourself, what the hell is wrong with the Star Wars franchise?
Well, look how Ivan Drago is treated in Creed 2.
Right. Well, that's amazing.
I mean, he's turned from basically a two-dimensional character like he was kind of in Rocky 4. And you give him an entire backstory. He's trying to, win his wife's love back by making his son this champion that he never was. And, all this other stuff. It made the character so much deeper than it was in that movie, originally.
And how is it that I guess Creed would be the seventh Rocky sequel, the eighth Rocky movie? Incredible. And you wonder if they can do that with the Rocky franchise, which is basically about a boxer. How is it that one of the greatest, if not the greatest cinematic franchise ever, which is Star Wars, how do we get movies that seem so ramshackle and thrown together and nonsensical? Let's bring the Emperor back. Really? How? Well, we don't have to tell you that. As a matter of fact, it doesn't matter. But it does matter, because if you start your movie saying the dead speak, and any Star Wars fans got like, oh, I can't wait to find out how that happened, and then you don't answer that question in the movie, how are we supposed to take that seriously? How is a multinational corporation worth billions of dollars, how do they allow that not to be answered? How is the first question not, ooh, let's put the Emperor in it? How is it not, our fan base is going to ask the question, how did the Emperor come back? And if you never answer it, they're not going to be happy. This is storytelling 101.
Well, they just wanted to be done with it. Kathleen Kennedy in an interview said, we just want a way to end all of it, to be done with it, to be rid of it. She doesn't care. She's taking this thing. She just wants to move on to the next thing because it's a headache. At least that's what it seems like. Anytime you hear her speak of it, it's just a pain in the butt where she has to deal with those people, the fans, and that's really where it comes from. It comes out of this resentfulness of the fans and the property.
Which is crazy, considering it's not just movies. They've got Galaxy's Edge, they've got merchandising, they've got video games, they have publishing. I mean, it truly is an empire. And you'd think that they would want the flagship of that empire to be the best it can be. And I just don't understand, having worked in the business, I really don't get how we have been getting the last three Star Wars movies have truly baffled me, to be honest. They've truly baffled me in terms of how they went about making them, because it's counterintuitive to what they wanted to accomplish. But really what they want to accomplish is make money, right? And all three of those movies made over $1 billion. And that's really, we as fans might not like them, but we can never forget that they've made over $1 billion, and the $2 billion that Force Awakens made was anomalous. Nothing like that's ever been seen. That movie still holds the record for the largest domestic box office gross of all time. And this was not something. This is an anomaly. This is not. But still, you have 4 of the 5 movies have grossed over $1 billion. So, did Kathleen Kennedy really mess up, or did she make $4 billion movies out of 5?
Well, you also have the one problem, and that is that until, and it has a very slim chance of it happening now, Rise of Skywalker isn't going to beat Rogue One's box office.
No, it's not.
Which is not good for an episode film compared to a spin-off film, especially when Solo did as bad as it did. That's the other thing. You have Galaxy's Edge, which isn't associated with Kathleen Kennedy, mind you, outside of the Lucasfilm bit, I'm sure. So that we can't necessarily blame on her. But the other parts, though, is this: you have a lot of pieces that have come out in the last few weeks where they've said that she's almost impossible to work with, basically.
Yeah.
And one thing I'd like to add, too, is where's the audience at? Because if we're going from 2 billion to 1.3 to just barely crossing that, these movies are turning people off, even if it's not alt-right trolls or whatever Bethany wants to say, the audience left. They're not there. We're talking what the Rise of Skywalker made.
Yeah, that's the biggest. Yeah,
Force Awakens made in America alone. So I mean, whatever she did, the hype was there in the beginning, and they pissed it away rather quickly. I think with a bad film in the beginning, and you just saw diminishing returns. Everything they've done has been wrong. Like, unlike Marvel, who builds up their fans, when they talk about Spider-Man leaving the MCU, instead of calling them angry trolls, or like, ticket buyers online are upset. So there's different verbiage used for the fans. And again, I always bring up the question: Disney owns them both. How do they mess it up so bad? I think it's at times too. I think they hide behind the IP, they hide behind the brand, and they go, Star Wars is the biggest brand in history. Look at this. And then they don't do anything with it. It's like, I'm here, but I'm not ready to play type of thing.
Right. And then you can't tell me that, I mean, we can't prove it, obviously, but there's a possible push from somebody at the studio behind an article like this, to bring it back to what we were talking about in the first place, to where, like I said, this is straight out of the Ghostbusters playbook. They did the same thing with The Last Jedi when we didn't like The Last Jedi. And, and then we're the ones that are toxic trolls. But then as soon as the whole Reylo thing didn't work out, boy, did we see some toxicity out of them. Right.
Well, I mean, check this out real quick. We're getting some tweets from Bethany. She's been calling for deplatforming since 2018 for Fandom Menacers. So, I mean,
the Trump supporter, Bethany?
Yeah, the same lady that wrote this article.
She has to love Trump because she's so obsessed with him. I mean, she just has to.
I'm just saying, we can look right here.
These are while we're actually... Oh, no, these are from earlier. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, these are from March of 2019. There's some ones from earlier. This comes from Data Racer. He's been helping us out a lot lately, actually.
Shout out.
But I mean, it's the same narrative they keep pushing in it because it's wrong. It's a lie. The Fandom Menace is people dissatisfied with bad entertainment, so they make their own. They discuss it in a way that people like. I don't know how this woman fails to see that unless she's doesn't care about what journalism is.
Well, it's also, I think, a fundamental lack of understanding of what fan culture has always been. I've often repeated this, but when we were doing the Star Trek: The Next Generation Blu-ray documentaries, Rick Berman said to us, sorry for my, hey, Tallulah, come here. Sorry, my dog's barking.
She wants to be on the High Council.
I know she wants to be on the High Council. But Rick Berman said he was convinced that what built the internet was pornography and Star Trek. And what he meant by what he meant by that in the early days.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, no, he's not wrong. In the early days, what did people? I know my first experience with a BBS board was in my apartment. My college roommate had started a BBS board. This is back in '88. And it was just to talk about Star Trek. And I was amazed that 20 anonymous people that I didn't know would come on at night when we turned our BBS board on to talk about warp drive and shuttlecrafts and the distance between Organia and Earth. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And so it was always, Tallulah, you must stop. But that's what the internet was. It was taught. Fans have always talked about these things. Always. And they've always had these kinds of conversations. This is nothing new. And anybody that examines fan culture would know this. And I mean, come on. It's so strange. I don't get it.
I don't either. They just, it's like they're never going to learn type of situation. This us versus them mentality that they've tried to create. It's like, if I was Disney, I would want to just win everybody over. You can tell a compelling story. You can, try to expand Star Wars and make it something different within the realm of, the stories. Like, I look at Star Wars, the original one, it's always like Star Wars Prime. Everything you do has to be at the service of that timeline. Those characters have to remain true throughout. And Disney, each successive film has altered one of the original trilogy characters to a point where they're barely recognizable. I mean, hell, Han Solo got it done to him twice. First, he's a deadbeat dad. Then he's some loser who can't get the girl type of thing. So, I mean, whatever they had against that character, they disrespected him twice. But I just don't get what their end game is. You'd think when you spend $4 billion on a property, you would want to milk it for as many years as possible. Not, hey, we did it for 4 years and change, and now it feels like maybe we should take a break.
Well, what's funny is that people still love Star Wars. Star Wars isn't going anywhere. Hell, I look at the new Hot Toys figures they're going to put out, and I haven't got Count Dooku yet. And he's from the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I'm still buying product from it. and I still like it. You know, I still like Star Wars. What's really interesting as a lifelong Star Wars fan, I have not bought one. Actually, that's not true. I bought when the Force Awakens, before it had come out yet, I bought a First Order TIE Fighter Lego set. That is literally the only piece of merchandising I've bought from the original trilogy, and I have thousands of dollars worth of Star Wars merchandise where I'm sitting. You know, I mean,
it looks like an impressive setup so far. I was going to ask you about some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, you should see. It's surrounding me. I've got Hot Toys figures. I've got 70 long boxes of comics. I mean, I have so much stuff in here, and it's a lifetime of collecting and loving this material. And it's interesting to me, who doesn't love Star Wars? I mean, you actually have to work hard to make people not like Star Wars. And I just don't understand. You know, you read these articles, I guess everybody wants to turn everything into some weird political statement. But, you know, the whole thing about Star Wars is it was classical storytelling. It goes all the way back. I mean, people talk about, obviously, Lucas was inspired by the idea of the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell and all of that. I mean, it's the most simple of stories. And if you even look, Han Solo's basically a truck driver and Luke is a farmer, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is a war vet. These guys are blue-collar, workaday guys, and then they're going to go rescue a princess. If that isn't the most basic, bare-bones story to tell, literally it's a fairy tale, and then you add all of this other stuff, it's that's at its essence. Star Wars is supposed to have that kind of timeless fairy tale quality to it, and how you get away from all that, they keep trying to add all of these things that detract from the simplicity of the core of what Star Wars is. You know, people that are essentially good people trying to do the right thing in a world or a universe that's against them, and they succeed over overwhelming odds. You know, and all this other stuff that you bring in, I mean, Star Wars is always somewhat political because it's about a rebellion and against an empire. So, but it's in the most basic way. And now all of this other stuff, you know, they keep trying to make it more
the
nuanced.
Identity politics, I guess, is what's more so the problem.
You just be good guys versus bad guys. That's all. That's as deep as it needs to be. It's Star Wars,
right? And
it doesn't need all these, you know.
Well, and you've said it yourself. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you said it yourself, Robert. You know exactly right away from the first few minutes of Star Wars who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. It's easy.
Right. You know exactly the crawl, and this is the funny thing, the crawl in the opening of what's now called A New Hope. I'll just always call it Star Wars. The crawl explains the situation, and in the next 5 minutes of the movie, you see exactly what the crawl told you. You're like, oh, I got it. I know where I'm at. And then you're off to the races following R2 and 3PO with the Death Star plans. And the film is narratively, it's very simple. It's very direct. It doesn't meander around and give you wayfinders and you have to find this thing to go get this thing. The plot is very simple, and you're shown from the very beginning, the first 2 minutes of the movie. Princess Leia puts the Death Star plans in R2-D2. You understand that because it told you what it was in the crawl, and you follow those plans up until you get to Yavin, the rebel base on the moon of Yavin, and that's it. And then they go after the Death Star. It's very simple to understand. And why they don't emulate that simplicity in terms of their narrative, I will never understand.
Can you imagine if we had a scene between Darth Vader and Princess Leia like we did between Kylo and Rey? Any of their scenes. It would have been weird.
I mean, but think about it. I mean, you know, you talk about identity politics.
Weird.
Who is the strongest female character that we've seen in Star Wars? Princess Leia. The first Star Wars.
She tells Darth Vader to go fuck himself within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And she lies. She lies to Tarkin. She lies to Tarkin and Vader to their faces in the face of the destruction of her home planet in order to save the rebellion, because she knows she cannot save Alderaan, but she can save the rebellion, which is a chance to liberate the galaxy. I mean, what's amazing about that is you're talking about there is a strong female. As a matter of fact, she's the first human character that you meet in Star Wars. And what is she doing? She's gunning down stormtroopers from the get. From the get. And it's like, this is, you don't have to play identity politics. You have Princess Leia, and not only that, she gets tortured. She gets drugged in Star Wars by a droid with that huge needle. She stands up to God knows what they put her through. And
well, it's really that she's resistance to the probe droid.
Yeah, her resistance to the mind probe is considerable. Yeah, I mean, and you look at that and you're like, well, if you're a little girl and you were watching Star Wars back in 1977,
that's pretty badass.
She's badass. And not only that, this is some rescue. When you came in here, do you have a plan for getting out? She grabs a blaster, blows open into the garbage chute.
Her own rescue, yeah.
I mean, it's so strange to me when we're talking about the idea that, what, Rey is the first strong female character? No way. It's ridiculous. Star Wars began, it literally opened with 2 droids and a strong woman who was running the show.
No, Rey is literally the chick who doesn't know if she wants pizza or Chinese. Seriously, throughout the entire movies. She's just like, I don't know if I'm good enough to be what I should be, and blah, blah, blah. And Kylo Ben's like,
you're not.
I love you with my chesticles. I get you. You know, like I said, can you picture any of those kind of scenes in the original, even the prequels, as cringe as some of the stuff between Anakin and Padme is? It's like, oh, good God.
No, they just turned it into Twilight. They Kathleen Kennedy decided that the only way to make this appeal to women, even though it already did, because she just is so clueless, is to go in and make this little character into Twilight. Because guess who likes Twilight and the Hunger Games and Divergent and Maze Runner and all these little teenage franchises?
Stop trying to make my Star Wars into adult, contemporary, or young adult, whatever the hell you call it, freaking books. Okay, it's not what it is. Exactly. It's space wizards for kids and got pew pews. That's all I want.
I'm just, you want more than that. What you want?
I do. I'm just being facetious, but yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at what people don't understand,
ceilings and caves and hallways, though, that's my point. Yeah.
No, but Star Wars, for its simplicity, still does a number of things really, really well. Like I've often pointed at the scene on the Death Star when the governors or whoever, the generals, they're all arguing. You know, the ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force. And don't try and frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion. You know, that scene is really interesting because it shows, I mean, throughout history, we've had politics, you've had the church involved in politics and religion. I mean, you're summing up 1,000 years of human history in one scene, showing the differences, the push and the pull between the papal, the like Rome, and it was very, very interesting to see how sophisticated that is in such a simple framework, and people forget that. And it's very simple, it's very direct. I mean, when she meets Lord Vader, I should have expected to, you know, I recognized or Governor Tarkin, I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board. I mean, these are just simple, direct ways of showing clearly what kind of a character somebody is, and you never ask yourself when you're watching Star Wars, wait, what's going on? Who is this person? What do they want? You never ask yourself that ever in Star Wars or Empire Strikes Back. It's very clear. It's very simple. And I don't know if that's because we've forgotten how to tell those kinds of stories, but I honestly, when I watched Force Awakens, I don't know what the story is in that movie. What is it they're trying to, they start out saying, okay, we have a map that we're going to look for Luke Skywalker because he's missing. But the rest of the movie just meanders from place to place. Let's go see Maz Kanata. Why are we going to see Maz Kanata? What does she have that we need? Why the Star Killer base? I mean, Rey gets, we got to go rescue Rey. What does that have to do with finding Luke Skywalker? You know, and you watch this movie, Han Solo's being, his ship, there's 2 rival factions that are after him. For what reason? Why am I watching these scenes? What do they have to do with the story that's being told? And I don't think they ever really knew. I don't think it's, in fact, J.J. Abrams really knows the stories that he's telling because everything is cribbed from something else. He's borrowing scenes. Let's show Kirk roll up on a motorcycle and watch the Enterprise being inexplicably constructed on the surface of a planet because I want to see that image. Well, why? What does that image mean? If you haven't set up the character from the get-go, when he rolls up on the Enterprise and sees it being built, you don't feel anything. And I feel that as a filmmaker, I don't know if J.J. Abrams really knows the stories that he's actually telling, because Force Awakens has no plot. It certainly doesn't have the plot that's described. We got to go find Luke. Well, that doesn't really seem to be the movie, because then we spend time with, what does Rey want? Okay, she wants her family coming back. Is she out there looking for her family? Why does she think that? Why does she think she's going to wait in this wreckage of an Imperial walker? What possible reason would she have to believe that her parents are going to come back? They haven't come back in how many years? And immediately you're giving us a character who is an idiot. An idiot. Rey is portrayed as being someone who is dumb because she's waiting for something that the audience knows is never going to happen. They'll juxtapose that with Star Wars. Juxtapose that with Star Wars, where Princess Leia knows exactly what's going on. R2, go find Obi-Wan Kenobi. Here are the plans. Get off this ship. Go find him. You know, and everything is directed. We know exactly what's going on. But in the Disney sequel trilogy, nobody knows anything. Nobody knows where they're going. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows where they've been. Han Solo doesn't know where the Millennium Falcon is. What is this gobbledygook? How is this Star Wars? No one. Why is everybody suddenly incompetent? That's the thing that I can't stand. I mean, even though Han Solo is getting through on bravado, you know, how are you? They still, when they make a plan, they're like, we're going to go rescue the princess. Okay. I mean, it might be a little haphazard, and but it worked. You know, but in Force Awakens, you ask yourself, who are these people? And what do they want? And where are they going? And ultimately, how did these idiots allow the First Order to build Starkiller Base within striking distance of the heart of the Republic? Because they're all dumb. Every single person in Force Awakens is an idiot. Everyone.
Just like JJ.
Well, you can't sit there and watch that movie and be like, well, you know, who are you supposed to root for in that movie? I mean, who? And they make you want, okay, so now Rey is an expert pilot, so I guess we have to root for her. I guess. But okay. But none of it makes any sense. And when you've started your trilogy that way, you have nowhere to go. You can't suddenly decide or make people good at their jobs. I mean, and that's what I think is that's what everybody is frustrated about when they watch Star Wars. They're like, why is this movie not great? Why is it not understood? Why don't you go back to the original Star Wars and study it? You know, just because you have something like Starkiller Base, which is like the Death Star, doesn't mean it's successful. You know, what's interesting about Starkiller Base is nobody's trying to blow it up.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's just there. Like, how have they allowed that thing to be who built that?
Well, not only that, how is Luke Skywalker going to help him with it at this point? And then they do end up blowing it up. So it's like, well, what the hell do you still need Luke Skywalker for, really? Right. I mean, the whole point of it doesn't make sense because it's built on the one, like you said, the one little storyline from the first movie of get me Obi-Wan Kenobi and we need to blow up the Death Star. That's the only two things they really borrowed as far as any kind of story plot devices. The rest is the characters are stand-ins, and we're teased with Finn and made to think he's going to be the lead character. And then, oh no, we slip in Rey, and you know, she has nothing to go with. Like you said, her whole thing is I got to get back to my planet so I can wait for my parents, who I should already know that aren't coming back because I'm so strong with the Force, and yada yada yada. You know. But anyway, no, it's true. It's very true, and everybody, you know, is pretty much agreeing with you in the chat about the, you know, all the stuff you've been saying.
There is no story. It's just copy and paste images, and that's where J.J. Abrams seems to come in for me anyway. He's very good at getting a visual. Like, he knows exactly what shot he needs. He has no idea what the story is to glue it together. He has no idea why. He has no idea, you know, what is this doing here? I don't know. It's just going to look cool. Doesn't matter. People don't care.
Well, and that's kind of the way
he's very ADHD the sort of way of storytelling. It's very much, I hate using like the autism term for a lot of this stuff, but it is very much how some forms of autism, I'm not being ableist, obviously, will not have any comprehension of why something is, but they will know that it is. They will know every beat or they will know every image, or they will know every single color that is used in a painting, but there's no emotion behind it. There's no human understanding. There's no compassion.
My kid has some of that, yeah.
Yeah. So he can probably take a whole bunch of things that seem to look good together, and this is exactly what I'm seeing in in anything Kurtzman does. It's just a whole bunch of, and then this visual, and then that visual, and they have no understanding of what makes anything. It's like trying to explain it to somebody who's only half paying attention, who's only half in the conversation, who's got one eye on the TV watching the Weather Channel or something, and they don't understand.
Sports ball.
Well, it comes from his damn mystery box, the way he builds everything up and never pays it off. He brought up Maz Kanata. The dumbest line in that movie is, "That's a story for another time," in regards to Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. Never told.
No.
Never. No. Well, this one of the things that I go back to Star Trek 09, right? Here you have a villain whose entire motivation is his homeworld has been destroyed. And he's so mad that he wants to destroy Vulcan and destroy Earth. But in the movie, he's traveled back in time 80 or 90 years before his homeworld is destroyed. He has technology from the future. And never once does he stop and go, I time travel. I'm back in the past. Why don't I go to my homeworld and inform them 90 years hence that the star is going to go supernova and I could save all of my people? And the very reason I'm so angry, but no, they never mention that. And when I'm watching this movie, I'm like, this is a science fiction movie. I mean, any science fiction movie that involves time travel, whether it was H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, or Time After Time, or Terminator, or Back to the Future, anybody who, I'm sure anybody who's traveled in space understands that. And I'm watching this movie and I'm like, I can't go any further. I can't go any further with this villain because he is the dumbest villain I have ever seen in a science fiction film. The guy's actually done what we've all wished we could do. I wish I could take that back. If only I could go back in time and not cheat on that test, or not cheat on my girlfriend, or not get in this car accident.
Well, Nero's in the same position too.
And it's just like, dude, really? And when I'm sitting there,
and instead he decides to just wait.
That's another thing. He was, if you watch the deleted scenes, he was put in a Klingon prison and he's hanging around to meet Spock. It's like, dude, warp home. Tell somebody, tell somebody what's going to
save
happen.
your family. Isn't that the one thing? Like, if you lost your family, what's the one thing you wish you could do? Go back and save your family. You're in that position,
right? And that's when I saw that. When I watched Star Trek 09, I'm like, I can't. The idiocy of this idea, the monumental stupidity of your villain, is I couldn't get past it. I'm like, this is so dumb. I can't watch this. And he's all angry. And I'm like, fly home. Tell the Romulan government you have future technology. I mean, not only that, he's got technology from 90 years into the future or whatever. Yeah. Why don't you bring them? And if you read the Countdown comic, as I did, it was Borg technology that was on Nero's ship. So why not just take all of that to your homeworld and do some rescue some folks? But that's the kind of script writing that we've got. You know what I would have, if I had a meeting with J.J. Abrams, if I was Kathleen Kennedy or somebody, and I sat down and was in charge, I'd be like, dude, you need to explain to me Nero and the motivation and how you think you could get away with the stupidest villain to ever appear in a science fiction film. And if he would acknowledge that Nero was stupid and understand why I would object to it, I'd be like, okay, maybe I'll give you another job. But if he didn't know how dumb he was, I'm like, you can't work for me. Because
did you hear what Tarantino said about him?
No.
Tarantino said that he went in to talk to him about Star Trek. I actually have the clip of it, but basically the basics of it is he's like, nobody gets that other crap. Do whatever you want. Nobody understands it. I don't even understand it. So he doesn't even understand the shit he does himself.
No,
and I believe Tarantino. Tarantino said this, but I believe him because he's not really a bullshitter. You know what I mean? He's not going to say something like that and not be true, I don't think.
But I don't, as a director, I don't understand. In Star Trek Into Darkness, Peter Weller's character is building a super secret Federation dreadnought in an enclosed facility outside of Jupiter. No one's seen this. It's super secret. Yet, in his office, he has a model of that very same super secret dreadnought for all to see. Does anybody walk in and go, hey, man, I've never seen this black ship with what is this? Oh, it's my super secret dreadnought that I'm building in a super secret facility around Jupiter. I mean, that's literally in the movie. And I'm watching this going, does he not pay attention? How does he in the edit bay? As a film editor myself, I'm constantly asking when I work with my directors, it's like, does this work? Does the logic of this scene work? Do we need to put in a line of ADR here that explains something so everybody gets what's going on? But in his movies, I don't understand how he sits in an edit bay for however many months and doesn't figure out ways, doesn't sit there and go, yeah, we better explain this. Why is he doing reshoots? Why does his movies not work? It's, I go back to, it's because Nero's an idiot. He traveled through time. He could have solved the problem that he's mad about in the first place. But, okay. And I felt that way about Star Trek Discovery as well. It's full of those situations. And with Star Wars, beginning with Force Awakens, I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you doing this? Why is anybody doing what they do in this movie? Why did Han Solo put up with why is the Millennium Falcon just sitting on the ground on Jakku? Why would Han Solo put up with that? Why isn't he going to get it like right now? But it's been like, what, 12 years? Explain it to me. I know it could have been explained in the Aftermath books. I don't know. But the fact that we're watching a movie where Han Solo, the thing he cared about most in the world was his ship. Why would he be apart from it? Why is he driving this gigantic tanker or whatever he's hauling around? Those monsters. If you're going to take the Millennium Falcon away from Han Solo, there better be a goddamn good reason. But we never know what it is.
And it better include Lando Calrissian or at least somebody who you can see stealing it from him in some way.
I know the reason, because script says so.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the biggest problem. And that goes back to the article and everything we've been talking about too. Is at least JJ was smart enough to say if the fans don't like the films, they're right. Here we are the first time in history, especially with Rian Johnson, where he just flat out attacked the fans. I mean, this would be no different than if you walked into a McDonald's and they attacked you for not liking your food. You know what I mean? They don't treat you like that. They're like, oh, we're sorry. Let us make it right away. It's just like any other business. For some reason, I don't know where movies and television all of a sudden became the first business in history where it's the consumer's fault that stuff sucks. I don't get that. I've never lived in a world like that before, and that's where we're at.
Yeah,
that's fine. We don't have to pay for them. I mean, they're not mandatory.
No. Hey, I have to go. It's my girlfriend was coming to get me. I have to go. I have to take off. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. One question before you go, since you're a comic guy.
Yes.
Who's your favorite artist?
My favorite comic artist of all time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I have 3.
Let's hear them.
Bill Sienkiewicz, George Perez, and Howard Chaykin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, I love people like Neil Adams, but I mean, those are the people. It was Bill Sienkiewicz. I love Perez's superheroes. I mean, I love his Justice League. I love his Avengers. I love his Teen Titans. Howard Chaykin, I fell in love with because I discovered American Flag, and I loved just the whole design of American Flag. It's one of my favorite comics of all time, and I loved what he did. And then, of course, Bill Sienkiewicz, I watched his evolution through Moon Knight. When he started out, he was very Neil Adams-esque. And then by the time he jumped over to New Mutants, I know a lot of people didn't dig it, but I love what he was doing. And then as he moved into Stray Toasters and he's a real, he transcends just comic art. And and of course, I also grew up loving John Byrne. I did love Byrne's work. I did love my 80s comics. And I have to say, there's been a lot of new artists that I did like Jim Lee, and I did like Whilce Portacio, and I did like a lot of the Image guys. And I like McFarlane. You know, when he started doing Spider-Man, and when he did that one issue of Invasion for DC, he basically designed the Dominators. And yeah, I mean, I loved all that stuff.
Well, I just always ask people that want to, that talk comics, because, it's always interesting to hear why people pick who they pick. I got to meet George Perez once. He was one of the nicest artists I've ever met. So,
I mean, New Teen Titans, the Wolfman Perez Titans is one of my favorite things ever. And I really loved Perez's run when he was writing and drawing Wonder Woman. I thought that stuff was good. I also like Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. I mean, I have an affinity for this comic called Alpha Flight, or not Alpha Flight. What am I saying? Alpha Flight. Atari Force, that only ran 20 issues, that Jose Luis Garcia Lopez drew, and I love that comic. Although I did like Burns' Alpha Flight as well. And yeah, I mean, those are, and that's only because my favorite artists are usually based. Like, I like Matt Wagner a lot too. Like, I loved Mage, and I loved Grendel. I look at my shelves here. There's so many people. I like, of course, Kirby. There's so many. Endless.
That's how I get when I start on a roll. I pick, I like this guy and Buscema and that guy. It just keeps going and going and going. So
yeah. I mean, and I love like Jeff Darrow when he was doing like Hard Boiled, and I was, what is this? I mean, there's so much great stuff out there. And there, the thing is, there's so many great artists that have been inspired by those guys. If you came out of, I mean, I'm older, so the things when I was reading comics from my teens deep into my 20s, that was my favorite era of comics, and that went from the early 80s to the mid 90s, really. And so those are the things that really influenced me the most.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about the script. Maybe
no, I could come back. I'm sorry I yammered on.
Fine.
I don't understand why we don't, with these big franchise properties, why more time, especially with Star Wars, has been how come it hasn't been taken? I don't get it. Why are we getting Star Wars that is mediocre? Why are we getting Star Trek movies that are mediocre? I don't understand. With all of the great stories, the novels, the comics, I just don't understand. And I don't get it. And you know what? Even though Star Wars Rise of Skywalker made over $1 billion, I think they left $500 million on the table.
Oh, for sure. This is supposed to be the closing out of Star Wars. Why didn't it make as much as the Avengers?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think it should have. And I think that the Duel of the Fates script, by the way, it's funny because everyone's calling this a leak. I was like, how do you leak a 3-year-old script that never got made? I think that script, I really liked the structure of the script. It felt like a Star Wars script. You knew exactly what was going on. And while it wasn't perfect, I did think that it was a fine effort. And by the way, let's just say that script, for those people who doubt it, it was further into pre-production than is known. There was over 140 pieces of art generated for that script, and the art was amazing.
I think some of that started to leak online, actually.
Yeah, well, none of that, I just want you to be said too, none of it came from me. I gave nobody, I couldn't, but I have seen some of that artwork, and it's amazing. And it's too bad. I think a lot of it was Carrie Fisher's death. I think that ultimately, because she died days after that draft was turned in, and I don't think it ever recovered. And I don't think, it's funny, somebody said to me, wasn't it blown up by Starkiller Base? And I'm like, was it? I don't know. Did we know that Coruscant was destroyed? And clearly I don't think they did. And I don't think anybody knows which planets were blown up in Force Awakens, which is another problem. I don't know how a beam weapon can turn, make left turns, but there we are. But
well, it sounds like the exact same experience I had 5 years ago.
Well, considering how close all the planets were, and Starkiller Base can suck up the power of a sun, wouldn't it just made sense to suck up the power of their sun and destroy them all and save the blast for something else? I don't know. That's just me. But
can Starkiller Base even move?
Yeah, it could fly. Remember, it could move through space. It just
Could it? I mean,
didn't it at the end because it was coming to get the rebels, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I can't remember now.
Sure
I mean, and then they build.
I
they
probably
build
forgot. I haven't
build
watched
a
it in
weapon.
like 2 years.
I mean, you have a weapon that's only on the horizon of a planet or on the equator.
If we try to start making sense of it, we'll probably break our.
I mean, what if you wanted to shoot in a different direction? Oh, I guess your beam can turn whatever direction you want it to go in, as evidenced by what we saw in that movie. All right. Well, thanks for letting me yammer away.
Anytime. You always have a spot on the channel to come talk, man.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you allow me a forum. I think it's great that we can all talk to each other.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's an interesting conversation. We definitely will get back together and elaborate more and go a little deeper because I think we could have some really good pop culture discussions.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mecca, everyone. Tom, I will see you all
Always a pleasure.
later.
See ya.
Oh, all right. This cold is kicking my ass. Sorry, folks, if I sound a little different. Mecca, I know you're going through the same shit.
Oh yeah.
Let's see what the listeners are saying, and then we'll start talking about our script. And I kind of want to bounce back over the Fandom Menace attack piece for a minute because Data Racer sending us some good stuff. We got people on Twitter that are tagging us and stuff. I mean, what does this woman hope to achieve? Like, folks in the chat, tell me, what do you think this woman's trying to achieve? Just clicks? Is that it? Because the comment section is not very kind to her.
I think just to smear us. They're so out of date and old fashioned with these. They're about 5 years too late with this narrative that anybody that doesn't agree with them is just alt-right troll, whatever they want to call us. And people are tired of hearing it. People are done with that argument. Even people on the left who they're just tired of hearing it. They're like, no, it's just a bad movie. Stop.
Well, and I think the comment section is going to be exactly what she wants. She's just going to turn around and play the victim now.
Yeah, because she sounds like a crybaby. She's one of those typical crybullies.
Well, I mean, this woman, alongside of the guy from Esquire, I think his name was Matt Miller, they just don't get it. I mean, last year, end of 2018, excuse me, Doomcock and I got mentioned in something, and then this woman this year, Matt Miller's done a couple other pieces. It's kind of hard to keep up with all the hit pieces on the Fandom Menace because they're more common than not. But the funny thing is the movement keeps growing because if we were all these terrible things they said we were, why would we grow the way we do?
Exactly.
I mean, combined our channel views are, millions and millions and millions and stuff. I mean, Washington Post would kill to have that kind of circulation readership.
Well, if you look at her Twitter handle, she only has not even 2,000 followers, I think. It's like, I have way more than she does, and she's got the nerve to, and she might not even have that many. She might only have like 400 or 500. But they want to, they're jealous. They want the attention that we're getting. Because a lot of these writers have, they have a face for being off camera. They don't have the charisma. They don't have the personality. They can't be on mic or on camera. They can't get anybody to listen to what they have to say. So they have to write these articles.
Well,
seriously, would any of us
my
ever
face on camera? There you go. Just my face.
There you go. Give you the whole shebang right there.
There you go. I know it's scary. Sorry, folks.
That's fine. Believe me, if my lighting, it's rough in here, but I can join you on camera.
I know I need to get some new lighting. That's my main issue is I need to get some lighting for, I got the green screen and stuff, but it doesn't want to work right with what I got. So between that and just the shitty camera and everything. But no, this hit piece is exactly what it is. And the fact that you and several others are kind of alluded to in here really kind of ruffles my feathers in a lot of ways. Cause it's like, I know you guys, and how can you be racist for one? That's just stupid.
I know, believe me, I get it all the time. Last year was the worst. Early 2018 was the worst because we had Retro Blasted on the channel and he got embroiled in all this racist talk from his fan base, or not even his fan base, a couple people on Twitter. So I mean, this misinformation's been there. It's annoying.
Well, they do it just to attack. They do it as an attack.
Well, it's an attack of where they call you an asshole and then you call them a dickhead, and then they have the audacity to get upset that you called them a dickhead. It's just totally ignoring the fact that they attacked you first. That's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, what do I how am I supposed to respond to this? Well, I will respond in a video, but it's like, lady, you're incorrect. It'd be nice if you did more than a Google search and glean little bits of information.
She didn't even do that. I think a lot of it's just she just probably got in front of a computer, made a bunch of crap up from the last 20 articles that everybody else had been writing, because these are the things that get clicks.
Well, I think in the article, if I can find it here, she actually goes through.
I didn't even read the article. I just yelled at the
how she.
title.
No, I got the whole thing here.
Yeah,
where she goes through how she actually got her numbers and figured things out and everything, and it goes by this one Star Wars website that used to post podcasts and stuff, but they quit, presumably because of the Fandom Menace. So she's just going off some small pool. At least that's her claim, and she gives like some arbitrary numbers. I can't find it in here right offhand. Where was it?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up too. I've read this thing twice now.
Yeah, I know, and I can't find out where, because it's kind of long and just meandering. That's the other problem.
It actually doesn't have anything to say if you break it down.
No, really, it doesn't. In the end, it's just trying to say you're a meanie head for, ruining Star Wars when it was already ruined by Rian Johnson, if you want to look at it.
One thing, too, like I always want to bring up, because no one really talked about, remember the guy, his name was Dr. Morton Bay. He's the one that invited Rian Johnson to coffee, and he said he has proof that we're Russian bots, and he had all this.
Yeah.
It was all bullshit.
Yeah, we broke down that.
Why doesn't that woman reference that?
Oh, because that was debunked. That's because we went through and we found that in Morton Bay's research, he found about 30 Twitter accounts that he decided, because they posted in the middle of the night with misspellings, that they must be Russian bots.
Well, and Larry, I actually know one of the guys who was pushing him to find out what the hell was going on, and he understood a lot of what he was doing, but he was kind of going by
lunch with Ryan.
Right. But I mean, as far as the actual math and what he was what he went by, and the problem is he went by this whole thing of, the common denominator of what was said, and this must be a Russian bot because they're using the same, kind of some of the same things that people have pointed out in on the other side here, and people go, well, that you can't prove that's a Russian bot. Well, you guys use the same exact logic on the other side.
But yeah, I can, because they're one of my followers and I've spoken to them back and forth in DM.
Right. Well, that's a little different when you can say somebody isn't one, but I'm saying that, I'm talking about the ones where, with the fake reviews and all that kind of crap when it came to Captain Marvel and a few other things in recent years, that we've dealt with this whole thing. And
well, we're about to go back to that with the Black Widow movie. It's funny. We'll probably get lumped into that. There'll be some kind of online thing to lump us into that, but most people I talk to are like, "Hey, Black Widow's a great character. I wish she would have had a movie first." But but be prepared for that shit. Like, the next month or two is going to be kind of whatever. We're having the final candle burn out for Star Wars, and then they're going to ramp this back up, because it's this. It's like in Spider-Man when Green Goblin talks about, when they're on the rooftop, he's like, this useless combat again and again and again, and that's kind of what this is. It's this combat between people with an agenda that promote lies, and then people in the Fandom Menace are like, this isn't what's going on, and they'll just keep doing it cyclically, because there's never really been a fan movement like this. I wouldn't even call it a revolt. It's a movement at this point. I mean, it's expanded beyond Star Wars. It goes to all genre entertainment, just pop culture in general. Our podcast has always been, if it's great, we'll give it all the praise in the world. If it's dog shit, we're going to, call it like we see it. Right. And I think there's a movement in all of that. I mean, we got guys like, I think Rebel Force Radio was mentioned in this article by name, and they said they kind of went alt-right. I don't think they went alt-right. I think they just saw that,
The Last Jedi was shit.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall, and they moved into the other direction. I mean, a lot of these people have. Never watched the Mike Zero video, so I don't know if he's changed his stance, but like a lot of these pro-Disney people are just like, time's up on this crap, because even they're like, I can't do anything with this anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of that came to a head. Sorry, go ahead, Micah.
No, well, I was just going to say a lot of that was, it started at the premiere with this last one where, we were on the council live, and who was it? It was Campia. It was Campia. And we were like, oh my God, Campia didn't like it. He came out of the premiere and didn't like it. And we thought for sure that he would be the one who would love it.
Well, I think the wheels even started coming off before then, actually, Mecca. And as
Yeah.
far as the Fandom Menace goes, and I think you coined this, Mecca. If not, I don't know who did, but you called the Fandom Menace more of a consumer advocacy group.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. Is we're out there trying to fix the products by complaining loud enough because nobody else
Yeah, and we
is.
bring light in on the whole toy destroying thing and all kinds of other things and the leaks and all the other stuff that we've all collectively done together in many ways. And it's just I don't know. It's strange how we've gotten to this point where they're trying to push this narrative on us that we're racist because we didn't like a movie. It just
I'm
rings with the
sorry.
whole
I'm supposed.
Ghostbusters thing.
If not watching a movie makes me an ist, I haven't seen a million movies that you could probably say, oh well, you must not like this sort of person or that sort of person because you didn't watch this movie. It's like, no, I just don't like this type of movie.
Well, and it blew up
Maybe
in their faces with the whole Charlie's Angels thing too.
yeah. It's like, I'm sorry. Actually, I did watch that one. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't good though.
And then to go back to the other thing you were saying, Mecca, is I think it started more so back when you had like the Collider thing where what's his face come out and said 5 years I put into this and I just wanted to go to Galaxy's Edge, and that other guy who come out and said, oh yeah,
Star
there's
Wars
tons.
fan. I've been working for 5 years at being a Star Wars fan.
That's how fandom works. You work for it, buddy.
Yeah, and then you had the
no,
other guy.
No. They kiss my butt, and I decide to reward them by buying movie tickets, or not reward them by not buying movie tickets.
Then you had the other guy who flat out said that there are critics who will give it a good rating because they want access.
And Data Racer has even pointed out that Rotten Tomatoes, he found something not to, or I don't know if it's a repost, but I saw that recently, where they'll give positive scores on Rotten Tomatoes just for access too, for things that they don't like that much. And I see that too, just when you read some of these reviews too, you'll have like a high score, but it's still slamming the thing too.
Well, I mean, speaking of the scores, it makes me laugh how Rise of Skywalker is now the worst reviewed Star Wars movie. I mean, we're talking Jar Jar Binks, poop jokes. Some of the stuff from episode 2 wasn't that good. And episode 3, I really don't have anything to rip on it. But yeah, The Rise of Skywalker is the worst reviewed. And I don't hear excuses. I think there are certain elements of Fandom Menace pushback that the detractors have just given up on. They can't take the Rotten Tomatoes thing. They can't go to that battlefield anymore. It's over. They tried to do the thing with Captain Marvel. They had the system changed in their favor, and now look what happened. And I mean, even there's some not conspiracy, but some issues where it's like, I think Michael from Retroblasting posted how the fan score of 8.8 or something like that didn't jump, but there were 90,000 new reviews or some shit like that. So I mean, even there's a little fuckery around that part. But overall, like we were saying with Robert earlier, you would think this would want to go on forever. Star Wars, we love Star Wars, but not this version. And all the books and comics and stuff you want to put out, like even in the comics, I've seen a decline. That's another video topic I've been working on behind the scenes. But like, it's really just how Disney does stuff and how George Lucas never did. Maybe he had a lot of faults. He had a lot of faults, but that 3-year gap in between each movie gave us time to watch it, cleanse the palate afterwards, get excited for the next, and make it the biggest event of said season, except episode 2. But I digress.
Yeah.
So I mean,
well, and to be fair about the whole 3-year thing, you don't need that amount of time. The reason that is because he needed that much time for the special effects and stuff too. Now that time's been sped up. You can get the effects done quicker, and you don't need. And it's more so. It's the same business with the whole Star Wars fatigue. There's no such thing. If that was the case, then we wouldn't have 23 Marvel movies already.
No, not at all.
I mean, it makes no sense at all to sit there and say it, because as long as it was good Star Wars, look at The Mandalorian, look at anything that has been good. A lot of people did like Rogue One, and I think that played into how well TLJ did at the box office, between how, the hype of The Force Awakens, and for the most part to the general consumer on its surface level kind of thing. And even to people like me, where I was like, I'm willing to give it, a chance to grow with the sequels and see where it goes from here. But The Last Jedi was just like a dead stop. You had this issue where, like Andre pointed out in his review, why make a third film? You don't need to. Every major end is tied up. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to go from here.
Yeah, Luke dies. Princess Leia's dead in real life, so who cares? Like, that's all I was in there for. Like, that's the biggest problem. Anytime I see these old franchises dragged out for what, to try and steal our nostalgia dollar, basically. What is there for me?
What is there for anyone in this audience? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I'm original trilogy characters. You know, I don't like these. I don't care about these new people.
no. I mean, I grew up with the original trilogy on video, and then the special editions, and then the prequels came out when I was 10. So I was like of the right age, according to George Lucas. But I mean, you know, even as an adult, up until the Disney acquisition, it wasn't uncommon for me to pick up a Luke Skywalker figure or Han. So like these things were evergreen, and it's not just about the merchandise; it's about wanting representation of something you love. I find it very hard to believe that people are rushing out for the Raylo doll set. And yes, there's a Raylo doll set. They don't call it that, but it's those Force for Diversity dolls I always make fun of in the toy videos. And they just, you know, they're not buying them. They're not doing any of this stuff. The wrong market was catered to. And you know, this is the end of it.
And it is. It's kind of a sad ending. It's between Solo and this, they can't deny it. You're going to see in a couple weeks, you know, a lot of hit pieces on Star Wars. Sure, this next trilogy they're beefing up with Taika Waititi and talks to direct is something, but until that gets off the ground and they actually announce like Kevin Feige's producing it or whatever's going down and Kathy's gone, there's no real hope for the core fan base, and the general audience is just could give a fuck. They care less about they care about Baby Yoda, and that's about it right now.
Well, in general, I don't even know what the big pop culture that general audiences are getting into. Like, is Bond going to be the next big thing? I mean, you know, I'm a huge James Bond fan. We've talked about this countless times, but like, I won't lump James Bond into genre entertainment like I would a Star Trek, a Doctor Who, all that kind of stuff, Star Wars, Marvel. But it's, I don't know, it's a property, you know, multi-film property type of thing. And even that, I wish the hype was higher, you know, when we're counting down to Infinity War and we're counting down to Black Panther and all this other shit, you know, the hype is there. People are, you know, it's palpable. And it's like, oh, yeah, we released an image of James Bond in a nightclub or this or that or whatever. And even if that franchise, though, they're still trying to entice that argument of the identity politics.
I actually think this is going to be the last Bond for a few years, to be honest with you.
I hope.
Oh yeah, it can't.
They're going to let it set because this is supposed to be the last one with
Craig anyway.
So they'll probably let it set for at least 3 to 5 years, and then they'll work up some other new deal with somebody and it'll get revamped. Hopefully by that time, a lot of this stuff will have settled and passed. The next big thing will probably be like, I mean, Dune has possibilities, but I'm afraid Dune's going to be like the next Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, there's a diehard ravenous Dune fan base, but it's not a whole lot of people.
And it's not to the size they're going to need, just like Blade Runner, to get people to go to the theaters to justify spending the amount of money. So hopefully it does well. Hopefully it brings in some of the normies and it's good. I've been hearing a lot of good things. It's one of the few projects. It's not going to bring in a lot of normies, I don't think it will, but I've been hearing a lot of good things about it, which is very rare for us. So
yeah, but I mean, if Star Wars couldn't bring in normies, like this is Dune we're talking about.
But as Jeff was saying, though, it's like, what's the next big thing? You know, people will look for the next big thing. And you want my honest opinion on what I think the next big thing is going to be? Probably old franchise horror films. Look at what Halloween did. And they have yet to strike with that, really.
But Halloween basically pulled the Force Awakens card from the playbook and did exactly.
And it did. And you're going to see Robert Englund probably come back at least once more for Freddy movie. You're going to see probably a Jason revamp, but it's going to be it'll either take place in the 80s or they'll try and find some way to tie it back to the original films. And they're already bringing Chucky. I mean, Chucky's been around. He hasn't gone anywhere. And I'm not talking about the remake. They're actually bringing Brad Dourif's Chucky back in a series that will pick up where the last films left off and stuff. So I have a feeling that that's going to be like the next horizon for the next comeback thing. But as far as like what's going to be the next Marvel or the next Star Wars, it's hard to say. I mean, Mecca's not wrong that Dune has a limited fan base. That I'm not going to argue with.
Yeah, I'm not a Dune fan at all. So
no.
And John Wick, they're saying, but John Wick's already on its third film.
Yeah, John Wick though is not. Look, I loved the John Wick movies, all three of them, a lot. I need to get the third one on Blu-ray because, like I said, I put my money where my mouth is with franchises that I enjoy. They're very like profit wise, they're good for the studio, but they don't do the same numbers as a lot of these other genre pieces. And like I said, I love John Wick, no complaints about it whatsoever, but I don't think that's a comparable thing.
No, I think 4 or 5 and it's going to sputter out. And then they got that series. So, I mean, that's kind of like where the lifespan of these kind of things go.
Yeah, we
You
need the
can't
next
really-
big book franchise, the next big, and it has to be like something that's obtainable for a general audience too. This is why they dumbed down Star Wars, and I hate using the term that that they dumbed it down, but they did. They've really watered these down for their general audiences, and that might be where they go with Dune to make it more palatable for the normies. And then, of course, they're going to try and throw in as many swapping and things as, like, didn't they have like a race and gender swap of some character?
In which one, Dune?
Yeah, and like the most
Yeah,
recent one.
but Andre talked about that in his latest video. It's not as bad as what some people are making it out to be. It's kind of it makes sense, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. Now, I'm not real versed on Dune. I've seen the movies, and I know what I know just from our videos kind of randomly. But I mean, then you also have to speak to Jeff's heart here. Look at how well Bad Boys 3 did this weekend. Don't think that they'll take notice of that. I have a feeling they're going to ramp up on Beverly Hills Cop 4 a little bit.
I hope so. I think Eddie Murphy is going to have a big comeback, bigger than we realize.
Yeah.
So that might be the next big thing is some of the great 80s franchises.
Well, the
might make
80s
a
are
comeback.
definitely, oh God, with Ghostbusters coming
Look,
soon.
Creed did well.
Oh, between Ghostbusters and Bill and Ted, we're going to see a bunch more 80s stuff coming back.
I hope Bill and Ted does well and is good.
Same.
Jay and Silent Bob, which is available now in digital, I thought it was really good. I don't know how well it did in its limited run in theaters, but I mean, there you go. That was another situation where it was a 90s, more of a 90s, 2000s kind of a thing. But, you've got a lot of these great franchises where if you get the right people involved, and I think that was another big thing with Halloween is you had John Carpenter all over that MFR. I didn't really care so much for the movie itself, but a few little changes would have made it great. You know what I mean? So it was like it was there, and that movie itself made more than the entire franchise put together. So there's something there. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a possibility we could see all kinds of great franchises coming down the road that aren't necessarily horror related, but are kind of close. I know they've been trying to get RoboCop off the ground, and Blomkamp walked away from that. But
you brought up earlier Robert Englund. I think that would be cool, but I think you would need a Wes Craven to get the same kind of hype you have for a Halloween.
Well, unfortunately, Wes Craven's dead.
Yeah.
So you'd have to get somebody like, I'm sure there's somebody out there that could kind of pair with him.
I mean, are you going to get the guy that directed Halloween 3, or not Halloween 3, Dream Warriors, Chuck Russell, who did The Mask? I mean,
that wouldn't be a horrible idea.
I consider the third one the best. I mean,
Yes.
the first one's actually scary. The second one's weirdly erotic, but I think Dream Warriors is the best Freddy movie, hands down. Like, if you
pound for pound, I agree. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I think might be actually the future of like successful entertainment, and I actually am going to go back to the John Wick thing. Less like not everything needs to be interconnected 20 film franchises. Just one off mid-budget fun movies. Not. Remember we came from the decade of like post Dark Knight. Everything was dark and gritty and took itself so damn seriously, and we're now post Avengers where everything was interconnected, but it was also a little lighter hearted and fun. I mean, not everything needs to be taken so seriously. If you did a Freddy another Nightmare on Elm Street movie and you made it in the vein of the jokes and the violence and this and that, I think what movies could use right now, especially with the advent of streaming, like I've just went through this documentary since I've been sick. But like theater going experiences are community based. You go see stand up with a large group of people in an amphitheater or a nightclub or whatever, but it's a group thing. You laugh louder when there's more people. You laugh harder when the dude next to you is laughing too. It's just this experience. And I think if Hollywood is looking for, something to keep the theater system going, you got to create an experience that you need to have as a group. 4DX and rumble seats and smoke effects and smell-o-vision and theaters that deliver you beer to your chair, all cool. There's a market for it. But if I can sit down with 200 other people and have a shared experience and we walk out all different people after that movie, like I did the first Avengers, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, shit, it's been 8 years since the first Avengers movie. I still think about what a great time I had watching that. with Sold Out House.
Yeah.
I never got that back. And to prove my point for at least myself, I saw Ant-Man and the Wasp like 4 days after it came out with like 6 other people. It was the first Marvel movie where I didn't feel anything. Even in Black Panther, though I don't love it like other people think I should, I still had that experience. So I think studios just got to create the experience. Have fun at the movies. All of entertainment is about fun and escapism.
Well, and that's what sucks about Beverly Hills Cop 4 going to Netflix and probably Masters of the Universe going to Netflix, is that those are 2 movies that I wish I would be able to have the shared experience in the theater. And you're right. The last time the closest I came to anything since probably the Avengers was Infinity War, but before that it was Lord of the Rings, and before that it was probably the Phantom Menace and maybe Attack of the Clones, because there was still this palpable, thing in the air, because I went to see Attack of the Clones in this huge theater, which wasn't even a theater. It was the Orpheum, which is like a venue. And there was like, I think they fit 5,000 people crammed in there. Maybe that much. I don't know if it was that many, but it was crazy. But the movie wasn't that great, but the experience was great. You know what I mean? But yeah, you don't have that shared experience. In the 80s was like that. And you didn't have to have a franchise to have that. You had Revenge of the Nerds. You had, Porky's. You had all these other movies that aren't necessarily these big blockbuster, what you would think is blockbusters, but they were movies that everybody had a shared experience with. And, there's little movies like The Last Starfighter that didn't do great, but they've been trying to get back off the ground for years in a new franchise. And as long as they connect it to the original, I think they'll do fine. Or, there's all kinds of stuff they could tap into from that era and like you said, Eddie Murphy's due for a comeback. There's lots of people they could, that haven't done shit in years that you could, get them out there, get them doing something. Look at Ghostbusters. Look at how much of a response Ghostbusters had when they dropped that trailer.
Oh, I cried. Like, that's all you needed to do. That's all you needed, just to make a little Ghostbusters movie. And there was news on that. Remember, Tom, how I said, no, they're not going to show us everything in the trailer? Yeah, they had some news drop that said,
and I understood. And I'm not saying I'm not wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But
I get why you were disappointed, but no, I think a lot of the problem is they're trying so hard to make everything these $160 million budget blockbusters to make $1 billion and make the Joker, make this little tiny movie and have a higher profit margin.
That's a great example there. We may hopefully that Hollywood won't learn the proper lesson, but if they do, and that is that every damn movie doesn't have to be a $300 million comic book movie. You can make a Joker.
But can Disney make a Joker? And I don't mean about violence and the character. I mean, can Disney actually allow themselves? Because I know they're getting rid of the 20th Century Fox moniker. And now it's just Searchlight Studios and all this other bullshit. Fuck them.
Well, it's still going to be 20th Century Films, but just not Fox. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's an institution right there. But I just don't think like you could have a Walt Disney picture film not be, how much did Frozen 2 cost to make? Hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Probably at least. I think what the average for an animated film is probably close to 200 million now, I bet, just to get them done in the time that they want to get them done and everything. That's more so it costs so much money. It's not so much, what they're doing as it is they got to get it done in a certain amount of time, and you have certain talent involved that costs money and to get things done in that amount of time because you have schedules to hit. And
look, you're a guy, you're a comic guy to some degree. You can't tell me that there isn't a Marvel character that they could pick and produce a $65 million film and have
Could.
I mean, I'm not saying it's going to make look at Joker. That is the reason why Joker gets shit on and people say it doesn't deserve Oscars, because that was the movie that pushed back against the narrative created by the media. Like we're the Fandom Menace, we push back against the narrative of all these people. The Joker was the film that went on and did so much big business, and people like, oh, it's a dangerous film. Don't go see it. You could get shot. There's threats. There's this. There's that. Nothing fucking happened.
Right.
Like
more people got hurt during the screening at Frozen 2 with the machetes than did the Joker.
I was saying, like, we live in a really stupid world. I was gonna say we live in a really different world, but it's very stupid the way these people glom onto things. Now, I've never publicly or privately even thought Disney orchestrates this shit. It'd be stupid, but I think a lot of people that do orchestrate this stuff hope that it helps these other forms of entertainment that they promote. Like, oh, we hope Joker tanks, but we hope that I don't know, Black Widow makes $1 billion. Like, it's all dumb. But I just don't think that Disney would ever allow itself to create a $64 million film with a Marvel character. They're locked into, we need bigger, we need bolder. I mean, wasn't it rumored that these fucking Disney Plus shows have stupid budgets per episode? I mean,
it makes no sense. They could do it. That's the sad part. Because look at it. They could throw out something. I mean, look at how much money everything makes that has, as long as it has Marvel attached to it. I mean, you could do a Daredevil movie and it only costs $60 to $75 million and it would do all right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can do these smaller characters that don't require a huge damn budget. It's doable. Now, will they? I don't know. I think Deadpool is going to be the only thing closest to an R-rated thing we'll get, and I'm kind of still questioning whether that's going to be R-rated or not. I mean, I know Blade, they're going to go as hard PG-13, and I've heard some good and bad things coming out of that from my sources, but I'm still crossing my fingers on that it'll be okay, because PG-13 now is much different than it was when Blade came out back in, was it 97? First one came out?
98.
98. So, I mean, yeah, R and PG-13 are much different now than they were back then. So, I mean, you can get away with a hell of a lot more violence and blood. And as long as it's like vampires and not people and stuff, you can get away with even more. It's kind of like how the cartoons were back when we were kids. Like, you get away with showing all kinds of robots and crap getting destroyed. But, as long as it's not a human, or monsters are fine and that kind of crap,
I remember on Batman the Animated Series, because that's my favorite cartoon. If you listen to the commentaries, Bruce Timm talks about how they would get studio notes. That's why they could blow up the heads and cut off the heads and shit, because it was a robot and they allowed that type of violence. And it's weird too how like censorship for certain channels is different per show. Like Spider-Man was oddly censored. Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever heard any of that stuff? Like how Spider-Man could not throw a closed fist punch, he couldn't break through glass, he couldn't land too.
He-Man was the same way. Yep.
It's just all these weird arbitrary rules that it's funny. I will, as a big Spider-Man fan, we're talking, comics, books, all kinds of shit that the character's involved with. Looking back, I don't think time has been as kind to the 94 Spider-Man cartoon as a lot of people want to remember. And I grew up with it. I was 6 when it debuted. I think
it's remembered more well, or I don't know how to put that. It's more, people are more fond of it, probably more for it staying more true to the comics. But I get what you're saying as far as the aging, because I tried watching it a while back, and I had a hard time watching it. Sorry.
Well, no, I hear that is what I'm saying, because I've gone through runs of it where I go and do, before it hit Disney Plus, it was on Hulu a couple years ago. Before that, it was on Netflix. I would just do runs of Spider-Man as I was working on stuff or drawing or stuff. I mean, I do like the show still. I just don't think it holds up. Like Spectacular Spider-Man was a much better adaptation of early stuff, in which, even though the animation style may turn people off, it's very fluid. It was very consistent, and it didn't reuse the animation like that cartoon did from '94. So, either way, sorry, that was a long.
No, and I totally understand. And He-Man was another one they couldn't show, and he never punched anybody on He-Man. He was always punching something and throwing something and putting the bad guy in some position where they were stuck or whatever, but he'd never actually punch a bad guy.
Yeah, now see, the weird part is like when we talk about He-Man, Thundercats, and these other things that get these weird new additions, I usually don't chime in on the channel because it was before my time, but I do have a stance of like with Thundercats, whatever the new one is, that really stupid looking one.
Oh yeah.
God,
I can't believe
terrible.
that it is terrible, and I can't believe that's a fucking thing. Like that actually bothers me, that a studio would try to cash in on an IP that kids wouldn't even know, and they make it that dumb. Like, remember the He-Man cartoon from 2003?
That was great. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you take that route with Thundercats? If you're gonna do,
didn't they do something kind of like that a few years back though with it?
Wait, they did do that. You're right. My friend Joel used to watch it.
But that's the same thing they did to Ninja Turtles. They made it even worse. This new one, I've only watched like one episode and seen bits and pieces here and there. But this new Rise of the TMNT is like goofier and wackier and more kid than the 80s cartoon, I swear. Like, it is just obnoxious. And this is where they've gone with a lot of this crap. Instead of getting more serious or giving it to the people, like, at least with Ninja Turtles, I think they're coming around and they're starting to learn, because I've already seen all the toys in the clearance aisle. So there's like no Ninja Turtle toys all of a sudden on toy aisles, which is really weird. And I think they're in their 3rd or 4th season of this Ninja Turtles cartoon. And they rebooted Ninja Turtles while the actual 2012 series was still going and fairly popular, which was weird.
Yeah, because I remember that one, because even though I didn't like the 2012 designs, they were popular. They were everywhere.
Yeah, and I watched enough episodes where I'm like, okay, they're sticking kind of close, and it's not obnoxious, and it's not really trampling on anything. And yeah, like you, I don't like the designs per se, but you know what? It's not doing any harm to the core of what Ninja Turtles were. This other shit is just obnoxious, just like the movies that Bay did.
Well, for me, even though I'm not the biggest Ninja Turtles guy, I liked the 03 cartoon the best, or the 02 cartoon.
That was a very good representation, yeah. Until it got really wacky near the end. They went and did some weird stuff that they kind of pulled from some of the later comics that I don't really care for, but yeah.
I understand, like, as an exec, you'd be like, well, this is a kid's franchise, we want to do that. But if you're picking up something from, 40 years ago, the 80s, 1980 was 40 years ago. For some people, they're like, wow, I can't believe that. A 6-year-old or a 3-year-old or whatever, they're not going to look at this and think whatever and want it because they're busy with other shit. If I was the custodian of He-Man, my He-Man stuff would be like they do the Super 7 toys are $50 or aimed at collectors. They're, if I'm going to do a movie, I'm going to do it in the vein of that. Like, just know
because kids don't buy toys anymore.
No, but they gear it towards them. I know they got all these weird safety regulations, and that's why the Japanese collectibles get all the cool shit, and the American ones are crappy plastic.
Well, kids want like video game stuff.
Yeah.
They want in-app purchases on their smartphones.
Well, the weird thing too is like video games. Even though more kids play, they definitely have like your Fortnites and all that stuff that definitely caters to them. But you still have that. You don't have the dumbing down of other games. The people get their Witchers, their Legend of Zeldas. Like, video games are probably the most widely accessible form of something. Because, video games follow trends at times, but then they're also like the tried and true things. Like, Nintendo's going to be Nintendo. Mm-hmm. When you buy a Mario game, you're going to get that level of quality. It's going to be for all ages. When you get your Zelda, it's going to be for most ages, but a little more thought-provoking. And then you get your Call of Duties, which is mindless fun. But there's something for everybody. Like, if you look at big movies today, I don't think there's as much for everybody. Always some kind of group gets pushed out in hopes of a new audience. There's no one's reached that since Marvel has found that special formula to get everybody and their mother in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you mentioned getting everybody and their mother in. Like my mother, I took her to Spider-Man, because she doesn't mind the character. She remembers when I watched the cartoon as a kid in the 80s. I was watching the 70s, the 60s one at the time. So, you're right. They get the normies. They get the everyday people. That's what Star Wars used to be. Star Wars used to just be for everybody. And now all of a sudden they decided, oh, no, we want to only focus on the women. And what do you mean you don't like it? What do you mean you're just a toxic man? It doesn't matter. This is Star Wars. Shut up and consume it. And they don't get that. They don't get that. They're actively being disrespectful towards their older fan bases by focusing on new demographics.
Well, and that's where it comes back to Ninja Turtles. It's the same thing with Star Wars and Star Trek and a lot of these other franchises. When you go to the toy aisle, even the collectors and all that kind of stuff, either or, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see 10 times more classic franchise material than you will the new stuff. I mean, all the stuff I grabbed for Ninja Turtles and all that stuff, I love. They got just recently they had the 84 original series and the comic book series come out at Walmart and GameStop and exclusive figures. But evidently they didn't have any new Rise of the TMNT this year because they're all sitting in the clearance aisle at Walmart.
Well, what does it air on? It's on what, YouTube?
Nickelodeon. No, they just put the first episode on YouTube or whatever. They may have put more since then, but Rob and I just watched it because we had talked so much shit about it between that and the Thundercats thing. And we're like, all right, we'll watch one just to give it a fair shot. And me more so as the major Ninja Turtle fan, and he's he's not a big Ninja Turtle fan, but he knows he's
got the
very
books.
he's very familiar with the
Comic.
original run, is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, he at least has a base of knowledge enough, and neither one of us really. I mean, by the 10-minute mark, we were just like, "What the hell is this garbage?"
Mecca, does Rob want to link while we're reading some of the super chats?
No, I can ask him, Rob,
Say,
if you're still around.
He was in the chat.
He's more than welcome to join. So let's see what our listeners are saying, folks. Thank you for sticking with us tonight. Apologize in advance. A little under the weather, so the energy is not as high. Caught a cold. If you listen to some of the videos too, you can start to hear me wear down a bit. But I'll keep on chugging. I think
everybody got sick. That's weird because
yeah.
I'm just getting over it, and Mecca and Rob are sick, and you're sick, and I think Andre was sick. And
Jesse's sick.
I blame Vegas.
Yeah, I blame Vegas too. You have to tell me about your experience after. Anyway, James Lucas says some fans refuse to see the Rise of Skywalker destroy the original trilogy. I'm left with watching the original trilogy like the sequel trilogy never happened, or just accepting the weakened states. James, I've said this before years ago. It took me 6 months after the Force Awakens to watch A New Hope. I even considered taking down my my Star Wars posters in my office. The way I used to have it, I had a drafting table in the middle of the room, and I had the original trilogy posters on the walls. The big, was it 27 by 41, full theatrical size, really into it. After that, I was like, nope, I should get rid of these. And I was like, I'm going to get Beverly Hills Cop, Back to the Future, and I couldn't figure out what my third one was going to be. So I do try to go that route, and, act like it didn't happen, but it did. Everybody was affected in a bad way. What up, Rob?
What up? How's it going? It's patient. It's patient zero checking in. How's it going?
Were you patient zero or did
I don't know. I think yeah. So yeah. If I did contaminate you guys, I'm really sorry.
No, I think patient zero is a capuchin monkey, and he's probably halfway to Rio by now.
I'm trying to stop an outbreak, and you're driving the monkey to the airport.
Pretty much.
Nathan Brake says, "Have no fear, for I am here." Well, hello, Nathan Brake. From the picture says, "Not going to be able to watch today, guys. I just got my VR set." Ooh, that sounds fun. I'll just say hi and wish we got the leak scripts. Rise of Skywalker 4 out of 10. Would have rather be waterboarded again than watch this. And he did get waterboarded for real. He told me the story off air. So now I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Sir Ruin of House Roundhead. We hung out with him yesterday. So I was with Jesse and Maryland for a fencing tournament. That's where I made the videos in the room. And our friend Sir Ruin of House Roundhead came down, hung out with us. Was very, very kind. He took us to Shake Shack, and I just want to tell him thanks publicly because it really meant a lot. He was so excited. I'm sorry I was sick again because I wanted to talk more and hang out and have the beers, but I just didn't have the energy, man. But next time we're back in town, we're hanging out. And he says, "I enjoyed hanging out with you and Jesse last night, Jeff. I enjoyed showing you Mike Zero's thumbnails with Keanu Reeves wielding lightsabers."
Damn it, that means I'm gonna have to up my game now. What am I gonna? How am I gonna top that?
Drinks, yeah.
Drinks ain't gonna cut it now. Shit, I gotta take you to the strip club now. So
I'm not gonna say no. No, but yeah, folks, I'm gonna 2020. Because of my prior living situation, I wasn't always able to, produce videos of on camera and stuff like that. But in 2020, I would like to, meet more fans, go out, make the connections. I'm going to be around a lot this year, and I definitely like to meet as many people as possible, and we're trying to organize a Fandom Menace meetup behind the scenes. We're trying to do all these things. So, I mean, this is kind of the year where we get to know each other as people. And so Ruin of House Roundhead was the first one I got to meet in 2020. So next time I'll be out, I'll make the announcement and we'll try to meet up somebody. So thank you, man.
Yeah, well, I don't want to appear on camera. I want everyone to think I'm a duck with a power ring. So
you are. I've met you multiple times. I will back that claim up till my dying day. Let's see. DJ Fox says, "Support Cecil's cash grab." I do support Cecil's cash grab. I gave Cecil a link so he could come on and promote it. Cecil's my friend. He's been very generous to me. So if anything I can do to help him succeed, I will do here on the channel. So Cecil, if you're still sober, you got a link. If you're drunk, you got a link. But good luck with everything, man. Darth Merlin says, in one of his streams, Robert Meyer Burnett used Kathleen Kennedy's resume to justify that she was beyond reproach. Thoughts? Well, to be fair, I think Robert actually addressed this when he was here in the very beginning, when he brought up how he thinks Kathleen Kennedy was qualified for a job. And what do you guys think of this?
She's a secretary.
On paper, she's qualified. On paper. I it's important to preface that. However, and this is, I will take Robert Meyer Burnett to task. I admire and I respect the man, but I have to disagree with him here. You can't tell me that anybody couldn't have produced those movies. Her first, he often says her first movie was E.T. That movie was going to be a hit no matter who. I could have produced that movie. That movie was going to be a hit. You could produce that movie, Jeff, and that was going to be a hit. Mecca could have produced that, and it was going to be a hit. If you're Kathleen Kennedy and you're producing the new Spielberg movie, and you call the New York office of film and television, and you say, "Hello, my name is Kathleen Kennedy. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Spielberg for Paramount Pictures. I'd like to know if we can arrange to have the Brooklyn Bridge shut down for about 2 hours between 2 and 4 o'clock on Thursday." Oh yes, Miss Kennedy. Sure thing. Yeah, they will move heaven and earth to make it happen. If you're Kevin Smith or you're Joe Schmo or whatever, they're going to ask you, "How did you get this number?" You keep calling. I'm going to call this number again. I'm calling the cops. I mean, that's the thing. Kathleen Kennedy had the benefit of being in the right place at the right time, and riding the coattails of people, standing upon the shoulders of giants, as the phrase goes. Robert Zemeckis, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. She is the Phil Jackson of Hollywood. When it came time to put a team together herself, she failed miserably.
How ironic. The name of the team that I quarterbacked for in high school was called the Giants.
Yeah. Boy. And like I said, for those who those don't get the sports ball reference, just I'll have to explain it another time. But like I said, if anybody could have produced those movies, anybody could produce those movies. Really. Back to the Future was going to be a hit. E.T. was going to be a hit. Jurassic Park was going to be a hit. I mean, are you kidding me?
The better argument needs to be made, like I've pointed out more so, is that she didn't even come on as Spielberg's producer until he was already Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. And what did she really do? She got him coffee. More cream in this, Kathy. Oh, right away, Steven.
It's not like they built their careers side by side or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I earned everything through affirmative action, Thomas. What are you talking about? So, fuck. All right. That's tirade over.
Billy Bandit sent in too. He says, Luke mentions teleporting off this rock in A New Hope. So JJ had precedence to bring him back. Just saying. Well, I get that you're being a little facetious there. But JJ dropped the ball. But we already know that. See, Disney Star Wars does have that nasty little habit of taking small lines of dialogue and building it up into something more. Yeah, George Lucas did it with the Clone Wars, but he didn't just make it one little thing. He made it a whole multimedia event and really expanded it. So Disney can't do what he did. They just do everything poorly. Swinging Cod says, say what you will of his personal life and financial management, Joel Silver was probably the best producer of all time by your definition. Joel Silver has done great work. I'm not going to deny that, Swinging Cod, and I don't know anything about his personal life. So let me see what he's done. We all know he did Die Hard and stuff like that. But let's see, Joel Silver. He is involved. He is responsible for The Matrix, Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Sherlock Holmes, Nice Guys, Predator. Well, we don't want to use Speed Racer as an example, do we? 48 Hours, V for Vendetta, Weird Science. Shit. Yeah, so yeah, he probably could be one of the greatest producers of all time. What do you guys think of his resume?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue it's up there for producers, what they do. Let's see. Bourbon Bear says, the whip makes me uncomfortable in a good way. Yeet. There you go, Mecca, making our listeners.
I don't have my soundboard up. Damn it! Shit, I can't play that sound.
Terminus EST says, "What are your thoughts on the Mandalorian, Robert Meyer Burnett?" Terminus, if you want to, I'm going to have him back on. I'll work out a time. If you want to shoot me a message over on Twitter, and I can ask him, and we can have that discussion here for you.
He's a very busy man.
Ryan Cannell of Arc Outpost says, "Imagine missing the mark so badly that you called Jeff and WCBS alt-right." 3 laughing faces. Rob, you've met me a couple times. Am I alt-right?
No.
Yeah.
No. And if you are, you hide it very well. And if you are, I'm not going to question it. I really am not. I don't give a shit. If you're all, if
I'd love to see somebody call you that to your face.
On my alt-right.
I'd love to see somebody call you that to your face, and not because you're not white, but because of how big you are, and you could totally pummel their
See,
ass.
I know better than to call Jeff
exactly
alt left. He'll crush me like a grape. I'm of a 5'7". He's what, 7'6". I'm not exaggerating. Yeah.
I would hate to be 7'6". Oh my god, it's tough enough as it is now, fitting into the backseat of cars. I hit my head so many times getting into Ubers. Oh, it's not cool. Our friend Grimjoy says, after Kathleen Kennedy ruined the Star Wars trilogy, you just know Bob and JJ are going to ignore her at the next Hollywood Eyes Wide Shut party. Oh my god. I think they would have ignored her no matter what. Have you seen her? Anyway, Christopher Richshot, thank you very much. He says, wait, 4 of my favorite people on the High Council tonight? I must be dreaming. Well, Christopher, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed our guest of Robert Meyer Burnett, as well as Tom from Midnight's Edge and Mecha Random. Rob, I'm going to throw you in there too, because you're here now, so you're one of 4. So you're one of his favorite too.
Woohoo! Default. My favorite.
Dr. Coffinail says, Kathleen Kennedy hates Luke. Star Wars is Luke. The subtitle of the Star Wars novelization was From the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. She just doesn't get it. Dr. Coffinails, I know you get it. We've hung out a couple times. We've had these discussions. But yes, you take the core and you destroy it. And then you say, hey, look, everything's fine. This is how this is my version of Star Wars. And the fans just don't accept it. Have you guys ever read the original novelization of Star Wars?
Long time ago, yeah.
Long ass time ago.
I mean, the closest I've ever read to it would have been the Marvel adaptation of the early scripts.
I've had no less than 3 copies of the one that has the gold cover.
Mm-hmm. That was the one I had, actually, too,
yeah. I remember on the Empire of Dreams documentary, it talks about how successful the thing was as well. So
yeah, and they released it like a year before the movie even came out. That's why a lot of people are under the misconception that it was based on a book.
Yeah. We actually, that was part of the mini doc. Actually, who was it? David Foster who wrote that novelization.
Think so.
Yeah, and he actually, the whole thing about the wills, George going back to the wills, and that was actually the prologue is supposed to be an excerpt from the Journal of the Wills.
That's what it says. Yeah.
Maybe I'll get a copy of it and check it out. Go to an old bookstore. Culture Casino. That's a really cool name. Hey, Bob Iger, if I brought Star Wars Disney, or can't speak, I'm sick. Hey, Bob Iger, if I brought Walt Disney back to life, would you want to know how I did it? The whole story of these movies left us a fragmented mess. Yeah, but remember, Culture Casino, that's a story for another time, according to JJ, Bob Iger, and Kathleen Kennedy. So, have you guys heard the thing about the rumor that Walt Disney's trying to buy up the Tolkien shit now because Christopher Tolkien passed away?
No, I haven't heard that.
It's just like rumors and shit I've seen on like less.
I don't think it matters because all he is like just the overseer of the Tolkien estate. That doesn't mean he's like the only person that deals with it. I'm pretty sure. Well, it's probably sure. Like its whole like got a whole bunch of people that actually are part of it. I'm sure.
Oh
that
man,
horrible if that happened.
I don't see why they would have any interest in it.
Well, I'm looking at a headline here from a website called Open Culture. J.R.R. Tolkien expressed a heartfelt loathing for Walt Disney.
I saw that today.
Yeah, so I mean, if they did buy it, I mean, I imagine there would be.
Wasn't there some famous story, Rob, where Walt tried to get the rights back in the day and they wouldn't let him do it?
I don't know,
and maybe that's why I thought I heard something about that, but I don't want to. Yeah, I could be wrong.
I'd have to look more into that. Freaking all the weird Lord of the Rings stories, Tolkien stories. The Beatles actually went to Tolkien to ask if they could make a version.
Yeah,
of
we
Lord of the
almost did
Rings.
get the Beatles animated Lord of the Rings or whatever it was, wasn't it? Or no, it was going to be live action.
It was going to be
wasn't it?
live action. Yeah, John was going to play Gandalf. George was going to play Pippin, or Ringo was going to play Merry, and Paul was going to play Frodo. And he just said, "Nah, fellas, stick to music."
I wonder how that would have turned out with that, the technology of 1966. I don't know what year they did.
It probably would have been like 1967 acid trip. It would have been
It would have,
amazing.
yeah, because it'd have been full of music videos in the middle of it. And
Yeah, it would have been amazing.
Makini90, welcome back. He says Star Wars has that fairy tale element to its storytelling that will make it timeless. You get absolutely none of that with the Disney trilogy. Yeah, I wanted to mention this to Robert when he was talking, though. Of all the shit they copied, they didn't copy the.
What is this trilogy about? That's what I always ask people who always defend. Is like, I said, tell me what the story of this trilogy
I figured it out earlier, Rob. This trilogy
Forks?
is about Rey deciding whether or not she wants pizza or Chinese food. That's what this entire trilogy is about.
Chinese
I snuck a listen in while I was at trivia. Yeah, I heard that.
Porgs.
In other words, it's about a chick who can't make up her mind. That's what it's
We're
about.
getting F's in the chat. Oh, okay.
F,
For
what does that
what?
mean?
I guess the stream died for a second.
Oh shit!
Uh-oh.
Boy.
Well, we're
Is that
still
what
here.
F's means? Otherwise, I
Nope.
failed.
They're saying refresh the page. Okay. It just,
Okay.
yeah.
Culture Casino wanted to let Robert Meyer Burnett know that Han Solo is actually a bootlegger. Yeah, but I did like his blue collar comparison. I've actually never thought of.
Well, I'm sure he would have agreed with that. I think I can speak on that for that much anyway.
Sheevburger, good name, but terrible first name for Emperor Palpatine. The sequel trilogy was set up to fail from the get-go when their story group was made up of a bunch of people with almost zero experience or Star Wars knowledge. Again, I agree. And was it Kiri Hart was the head, and you have this new, was it Michelle Rejuan? She's the new boss of Star Wars or something up. She's coming up in the ranks. Like, who is she? She's just a J.J. Abrams,
Disciple.
pretty much.
Cult member.
Take a look at all their credits. None of them have any sort of writing or storytelling or any kind of experience in Hollywood.
Hey, she played a waitress on an episode of something or other.
Wasn't it Gossip Girl or some shit like
Something like that, yeah.
JJ likes to plant his little people all over the place, though.
He's like a spore. He's like a pod person, and he comes in and he just sucks all the creativity out of Hollywood. And
No,
he's got Kurtzman and Goldsman over there still at Star Trek. He's got Michelle sticking around at Star Wars. He's on his way over to DC and Warner Brothers.
He's a cultural locust. He comes in, he uses up a property, strips it bare, and then moves and leaves the field in ruin and moves on to the next one.
Doesn't he
And
still
now-
have some hooks into Mission Impossible too?
I just read
Probably.
I just read just now, was it Justice League he wants to get his hooks into?
yeah,
Now, I think that Disney may realize the precarious MCU situation, and Warner Brothers is looking at him as a way to steal the comic book market share. I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm not saying I like it, but I do think they will put him onto a Superman or something like that and try to, while Marvel is going with B-list characters now, Warner Brothers is going to come out with A-listers. We got Wonder Woman going up against Black Widow. Theoretically, Wonder Woman's a household name. Black Widow only over the last couple of years because of the MCU and Scarlett Johansson. So if Warner Brothers is smart and they keep J.J. Abrams not on a tight leash per se, but like, I don't know, find a better producer and maybe let him direct or do whatever, you could have some DC stuff. Hopefully,
Remember the Reddit leaks that made JJ sound like he was the Messiah that Disney just, sacrificed on the altar of Star Wars?
Yeah.
I believe that most of that was bullshit, or at least twisted to make JJ look good. Because in the end, I mean, if anything, his stock went down a little bit. And I think that whole thing with, Disney's trying to make him look bad in the eyes of Warner Brothers is more so JJ's worried, because look at the timing of all that. Joker just totally rocked the box office, right? And shook up the entire DC universe. I guarantee you they are trying to figure out a way to try and capitalize on that somehow, some way. And JJ doesn't fit into that like kind of a thing. He's not what's the name of the guy who directed Joker? Jesus, it just escaped my mind. Todd Phillips, thank you. He's not a Todd Phillips. Okay, he's not one of these guys who can come in and make a movie like that. If he comes in and makes a superhero movie, it's going to cost $275 million. It's going to be a lot of flair and flash and no substance. It's going to be just like everything else he does, and I've gotten into this with a few people. I'm not going to name any names because I don't need anybody going and getting attacked. But I argue that JJ is a hack. There is nothing that he's done, not one thing that has been original. He's directed, 6 movies now, and all of them have been in some kind of franchise. Outside of Super 8, which you could argue is just a ripoff of E.T. and Close Encounters. Yeah.
Well, that's really what he wants is a franchise. I mean, remember he wanted Star Trek originally because he wanted a multimedia. He wanted to create his own multimedia empire around it. With books and comics and video games and television. I mean, and he's going to move on to, like I say, he's a cultural locus.
Theme parks.
In theme
He
parks,
wants to do a theme park.
Well, he wants theme park attractions. I mean, I imagine like if Jeff, you know the story about why JJ left Paramount and Star Trek, right?
I watched your guys' documentary, but I don't remember. Just didn't refresh me.
Well, the short version is that JJ was Bad Robot gets a piece of the Star Trek movie merchandise, and CBS owns the Star Trek IP. And what happens is CBS makes about $20 million a year on Star Trek merchandise from the original series. That was the figure we heard.
What was the figure?
20 million a year, roughly about that.
Oh, they're making on the original franchise stuff.
Originals
anywhere from $20 to $40 million.
Yeah. And JJ said to CBS, please take original series merchandise off the shelves so it won't compete with my merchandise. And CBS said, go fuck yourself.
And he said, well, why are we doing this? We're just competing with ourselves, which sounds just like him saying, well, then you might as well put written and directed by Lucasfilm on this.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why I do believe that line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that's why he when the opportunity came, he jumped right over to Star Wars, because have you noticed everything is just a little bit different? I mean, the TIE fighters are black, the X-wings have a little bit extra trim.
The noises are different.
The sounds are different.
Beach ball.
Yeah, R2D2's a beach ball. The rebel helmets, they're the rebels. The rebel helmets have a little extra piece along the face, along the chin strap there. Everything's just a little bit different, just so that he can get that nice little kickback from the merchandising when it sells. I'm like, haha, you destroy the merchandising, so it shows what you know.
Well, to be fair, he didn't destroy it per se.
Yeah, well, KK called.
Ryan did, kind of.
Yeah, Ryan did. Yeah, the hilt.
Hey, Ryan actually did the only thing that sold the porgs.
I don't know how well they did sell. They keep making them, so they must have sold okay. But I'm just saying,
I have a fuck ton of them, and
I
like
for
them.
2 years. I've seen Last Jedi toys, and well, Jeff, you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about.
Oh yeah,
dude, ain't nothing but dust on the clearance shelf. So yeah.
And I mean, even if you look at online retailers, and Logan Michael, who's in the chat, and some of our collectors friends know, online retailers hate the lower prices. They'll hold on to a figure forever if they can think they can sell it at full price. I've never seen Star Wars shit go 70, 80% off. The hot toys that, Robert Meyer Burnett was talking about earlier, they're $250 action figures. They're now offering you $150 store credit to sell the prequel era stuff.
Oh my God.
Prequel era stuff, excuse me. So, I mean, yes, they've done damage all over.
You've devalued the brand, is what it is. Star Wars. I said on Facebook. I said on Twitter the other day. It says I remember there's what do you call it? Jeff from Jeremy from Woke Us Bullshitters. He had that video of the toy aisle of the meager Star Wars selection. I remember there were 3 toy lines in the 80s. There was G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Star Wars. The shelves were stocked full of them. just as far as the eye could see. And I never thought I'd see the day where you couldn't give Star Wars merchandise away.
Well, and I said there wasn't an actual toy line tied to The Rise of Skywalker until Ryan Cannell said he swore he saw a Poe figure and he should have bought it that actually had the Rise of Skywalker banner on it, and it was on the classic black, 3.25-inch figure.
Oh, that was that was the vintage collection, because that line also includes like Luke Skywalker and Boba Fett.
Well, then that's not technically an actual Rise of Skywalker figure line, then I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't. The closest thing,
I guess, with an asterisk.
Yeah, or the closest thing they would have would have been the Star Wars. What's the Galaxy Adventure has a whole line.
Oh,
that's cartoony crap, though, ain't it?
Galaxies of Adventure. Yeah, where they're trying to rewrite history, make Leia into some far more important than she actually was. She's
one of the most important characters, so they just are kind of screwing that up.
Yeah, she's dead now. Yeah, but they show her on Hoth leading the battle. I'm like, no, she never did that.
She said she rallied the troops, and then Han took her away.
Well, and just for those who may not know how the retail business works as far as this stuff goes, the reason that there was no real toys this year was because the Walmarts and Targets and all those didn't order anything. They didn't want to, so there was nothing to back it up. You know what I mean? Because that's like Jeff was saying before, they get stuck with all these toys. And trust me, I know, because from my video store, I still got a bunch of crap from the prequels. Well, the Phantom Menace mostly, that never sold. Most of it is Jar Jar Binks, to be fair, but it's just the point that we had the same thing then and the same thing now, and this is why there was very little toy lines for the second Star Wars film prequel, anyway, Attack of the Clones, because the Phantom Menace stuff didn't sell so much, and we're seeing the same stuff all over again, only worse, because there's literally no toy line for this movie, and Star Wars once had its own section in some stores, or entire, row in some stores, and now it's
I have pictures of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Two-sided aisles, man. Huge end caps. Fucking, what are the ones that kids would ride? The Power Wheels. They had Star Wars Power Wheels, that land speeder. That didn't sell. I mean...
Somebody has one in my apartment complex, actually.
Oh, yeah. Oh, here
probably because they got it on clearance for $20.
Yeah, I think they use it as a planter or something.
No, I'm not kidding, because I actually thought about getting this. Sorry, Rob, I got to say this.
Okay,
I actually thought about getting this when getting that exact one when Toys R Us was closing down, because it was so cheap, and I'm like, you know what? It almost looks good enough just to have as like a model sitting
just
somewhere.
Decoration.
Yeah, but it was
I kind of wish I would have got one, but
but anyway, that's all.
Where would I put it? Where would I put it?
Yeah, listen to this thing about of how we talked about Tolkien. Here's how Tolkien described Disney. Okay, he described Disney's work on the whole as "quote unquote" vulgar, and the man himself in a 1964 letter as simply a cheat who is hopelessly corrupted by profit seeking. Though he admits he is not innocent of the profit motive himself. I recognize his talent, but it has always seemed to me hopelessly corrupted. Though in most of the pictures proceeding from his studios, there are admirable or charming passages. The effect of all of them is to me disgusting. Some have given me nausea.
Ouch.
That's pretty damning.
He's doing a lot of backhanded compliments there.
Well, he was an Oxford professor of linguistics. I mean, so.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Tryon says Star Wars derailed the moment Disney killed the EU, then in desperation harvested its organs, Thrawn, Macquarie, etc. To try and stay interesting. I just want to give you a shout out, Michael, for mentioning Ralph Macquarie. I think he's one of the, for as much as we all love Star Wars, I don't think enough people give that dude enough credit anymore, because his concept art defined Star Wars, and it's really what sold it to Fox. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying nobody out there gives him the proper respect, but it is nice to hear his name come up a lot more than it does. Or it should come up a lot more than it does.
Oh, it's fucking gorgeous, isn't it? That art? Man.
I'm gonna pull up something. It's he captured something that no other artist could have captured.
Michael Connerson, though Transformers cartoon remains solid for most, yeah. I was talking about G.I. Joe before. I remember the first. Do you remember the Mass Device miniseries?
I do not. I'm too young for G.I. Joe.
Okay, well, anybody in the chat. I remember they initially colored in the comic books, the masks on Cobra are red. And they initially on the cartoon colored them red, but then they went back and they like rotoscoped them in black to make them more closely resemble the toy line. I cannot for the life of me find a VHS rip of the original miniseries. I gotta see if I can track that down somewhere. Somebody's probably got to have it on eBay, or maybe one doesn't exist. Maybe they got lost.
Maybe you're living in an alternate dimension.
I do love the Mandela effect. Or the Mandela effect, excuse me.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
There you go.
That's awesome. I love that. I never get tired of that painting.
That's why I liked that George Lucas had Ralph McQuarrie featured so heavily in the Empire of Dreams documentary, because it was like, hey, this guy is responsible for this, that, and the other. And, you know, it was sad to see Ralph. I think did he suffer from Parkinson's in his old age?
I think so.
He was shaking really badly, and he still put him in the documentary the whole time. And I just was like, cool. And this guy's contribution to Star Wars, alongside with John Williams, are probably two of the four, because you got to add Ben Burt with his sound effects and then George Lucas with his story.
And maybe even Phil Tippett and Joe Johnston and some of those guys. You know.
Gary Kurtz, for sure.
Kurtz, yeah.
I think he's another one. I would put money down if Gary Kurtz was involved with Return of the Jedi and the prequels. We would have had, 10 out of 10 films across the board. And then Gary Kurtz would have been involved with, let's say Lucas did sell it in 2012. Gary Kurtz was brought in by Disney instead of Kathleen Kennedy is wherever, but Gary Kurtz is brought in to be like this co-producer or whatever. But I think that would have been Kathleen Kennedy's smartest move. She would have brought in Gary Kurtz and said, hey, Gary, you did it right the first two times. Let's see if you still got the magic. And,
I think that was part of the reasoning for bringing in Kasdan, but I don't think we anticipated his kid.
No. Yeah. The next generation is not too smart.
And I think he's just either that or Kasdan Sr. I know they're not. I know the other one isn't Junior, but I can't remember his name. It's Jonathan. I think, yeah. And Jonathan and Jake, I think it is, yeah. John Kasdan and Jake Kasdan, I think. Anyway, point being, I don't think that, or he just got lazy as a writer, because he used to be a great writer and great director.
Dude, he wrote fucking Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And Empire, and part of Jedi, and part of Empire, but I mean, I think he had more influence on Empire. It sounded like he had more influence over Empire's script than he did Jedi.
Well, I think George Lucas gives credit to this lady Lee Brackett who died before.
Yeah.
And so some of her ideas may be like roughly there, but I think Lawrence Kasdan did way more, but she just gets credit out of like respect.
Yeah, I can't. Is it Jonathan or Jake Kasdan is his kid? I thought it was Jake.
They're both.
Because he's got two kids?
Jake Kasdan's a director.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, that's why everybody's
nepotism at its finest. Because I'll tell you, I don't know about this. Because that's the guy, one of them wrote, which one wrote fucking Solo then? Now I'm
Jonathan Kasdan.
Okay.
Yeah. But Jake Kasdan is the one that directed the new Jumanji. Both of those.
Okay.
Bad Teacher, Sex Tape, Orange County, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Bring that guy in.
Where
the hell's he?
The Big Chill.
Dewey Cox is a fucking masterpiece.
I love him. I've got a song about an octopus. I got a song about an octopus. Which blow out your ass?
Yeah, parents are Lawrence Kasdan.
Fuck you. You always take her side.
I have never seen that movie.
You've never seen Dewey Cox?
Oh, it's good.
Doing pretty damn good for a 15-year-old with 16 kids or however many. A monkey.
I'll check it out. I mean, I like John C. Reilly.
Well, it's basically like a
parody of Walk the Line.
Walk the Line, yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of those kind of old music movies. We're musicians, so we kind of tend to, I think a lot of us gravitate towards the music documentaries anyway, or biopics.
The wrong kid died.
It's a beautiful.
Makes fun of Ray a little bit too, yeah.
Our friend Seriously Black 7 says Leia was a badass in 77. She don't shiv. She was a badass in 77, and it was sad.
Well, that's what's stupid about that, whatever the hell that cartoon is called. She was already a badass. He didn't need to make. They just went out of their way to make Luke and Han more incompetent as well.
I mean, literally, the first thing that happened with her is there's one set for stun, and she shoots the stormtrooper. She just kills him outright, and the other ones were going to stun her. So I mean, Princess Leia was always cool. I've never Like, I don't know. I always use this example because it's the best way I can describe it. When I bought Star Wars, like new lines of figures, I had to get Princess Leia because she was, cool. Like I'll put my money where my mouth is. I want to own Princess Leia stuff because she's as cool as the dudes. Very rare in a franchise where every main character is cool. Pin Drop says they totally destroyed the Han Leia romance. They did. You thought they would live happily ever after and go off and do shit. And nope, they destroyed it, and it was really awkward.
Yep.
Logan Michael Anti-Funko Pop says, I just got the McFarlane Detective Comics 1000 Batman. It's definitely the only good figure in the wave. I definitely recommend it. I might check out the Batman Who Last figure, though. Well, Logan Michael, I got your message on Twitter, obviously, because I responded back to you. But yeah, I'm not sold on the new McFarlane toy line. It's nice that Todd, I'm a Todd McFarlane fan, is both a person, an artist, and a businessman. I like what he does. But I'm not in love with his DC line. So, I'll check them out, man. I'll look at them in person. But like for the Batman the Animated Series stuff, I'm going to stick with the DC collectibles.
Yes.
Mexi Man and Cheese says JJ is Paul McCartney without John Lennon.
Nah, I got it. Hey, man, come on. Paul still recorded Ben on the Run, Red Rose Speedway.
Live and let
die. Yeah.
Ram. I mean, come on. That first album he recorded in his living room was really good.
Yeah, for that analogy to actually work, JJ would have had to been good with somebody first of all. He never really was. I think he was just a hack through and through. Another one who got his leg up for Spielberg.
I'll put the very last song on Ram, Backseat of My Car, up against any Beatles song any day of the week. Oh my God. I mean, it's that good. So, but that's just me. So.
Well, that's just because, our love for the Beatles is all we have to talk about sometimes. But yes, anyway,
Yeah, I took him to the Beatles store, and he kept wanting to go back.
You got a picture of me with the blue meanie?
Yeah. Let me find it.
Blue meanies.
We meanies only take no for an answer.
Yes, sir. I mean, know your blueness.
I have to get to see that movie.
You've got to be really stoned.
That's not a good one. What's the good one?
Well,
yeah, I can't find the good. Oh, there.
Blue meanie.
Because it's just right in front of the store. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, no.
That's a good picture.
It's a Mirage.
Yeah, with the Beatles store.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm so congested. Sorry, folks. Boag says, or Bogue, they overused the ist/phobe attacks because it was an easy way to win an argument for the Dem/commies. People are fed up with it.
Well, yes and no. It was the only thing they had left, really. I mean, they can't defend the movie, or anything they do on their work on their merits. So they just got to go. That's all they had. They just pull out the nuclear option.
Yeah.
And most of them are just keyboard activists anyway. They don't actually get off their duff and go see Ghostbusters 2016 or Charlie's Angels or anything like that. They just love to blame everybody else for not going.
Mecca, what did Princess Weeks say about Captain Marvel? Remember?
She said, I know I'm a bad feminist, but it doesn't need my money after all, and I didn't see it.
But she called everybody who didn't like it an ist or a phobe.
Yep. Because she's hateful like that.
A Scottish Nerd, great screen name, says, my middle of the night now. I must be a Russian bot. Yes, you are.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
Would somebody go out there and convince the Twitterati that Song of the South is this wonderful depiction of race diversity that Disney won't let out of the vault? I think everybody will kind of see what I'm getting at here, but I just want to see it happen. I want to see this train wreck in force.
Yeah. Let's convince
because all of them are stupid enough not to look up this movie.
Let's
what I'm talking about.
Let's convince. Let's do something even better. Let's convince the Twitterati to wear their underwear on the outside.
I still insist that if they have their gender and their pronouns in their Twitter bio, that needs to be their profile pic. Just drop trowel and show me, because that's all that really matters about you, right?
Mm-hmm. But when you do that, you make me think of Quail Man, and I like Quail Man. Chris says, it's fatigue. I'm tired of watching shitty Disney Star Wars. I'm tired too, and thankfully I don't have to do it possibly ever again. So we'll see Cassian Andor if it's decent. If it comes out before my free year of Disney Plus goes, yes, I'll watch it. If not, Mandalorian was cool.
Release the Remus cut.
Oh my God, I love it. Mellow E says, Jeff, what's up, you sexy bastard? What, Mellow E? A little sick, under the weather, but very happy. Life's good right now. Been working hard. You guys have been getting a ton of videos. Moved out west, having a lot of fun there. So yeah, that's what's up, man. Thanks for asking. Maybe one of these days I'll do a solo stream and get everybody caught up, and we can talk about ideas and shit you'd like to see on the channel. Got a couple things surprise things planned. So thank you, Melody. Baptist 702 says Marvel Studios needs to crash and burn, separate from Disney again, and be rebuilt with consistent stories from the older comics and not Disney's agenda. That's an interesting take. What do you guys think?
They definitely need high-profile failures.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you do kind of need something to ultimately crash and burn and fail before, you're a sports fan, Jeff, and you have to bottom out before you can rebuild.
That's Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah. New York Giants too this season.
No, but so Baptist, I would like, I'm of a mind, I enjoyed what we got with the MCU prior, but I would like classic stories. What I would do, if I can meet you halfway, is when I would build the X-Men, I would build the X-Men with classic stories and do it that way. Like the Avengers, we've seen them, they've come, they've gone. They were great. Age of Ultron's my least favorite of all of them. But that's it. Yes, Disney's agenda does play a part in some of these things. So does their interest in China, some of the censorship. I mean, there's a lot. It's not pure artistic filmmaking. It's very much filmmaking with a strong emphasis on the business, which I get. That's how you do it. But X-Men is their next chance to do what you want. And I'd like to see a strong X-Men franchise. And I don't want to start with first-class style X-Men. I don't want Iceman or Beast Without Blue Fur. I'd like where you just would do the animated series approach, and you plug some of those characters into classic stories and just tell them with a slightly modern twist. And there you go. I'd love to see the Hellfire Club, and I want to see the Dark Phoenix saga done properly. I want to see the X-Men fight the Morlocks. I don't want to see the X-Men in black leather suits fight Magneto for 4 films. I want to see the X-Men go up against Mr. Sinister, a good Apocalypse movie, the fucking Brotherhood of Evil Mutants with, crazy lavish suits where Pyro, the Blob, all these people. Blob shouldn't have been just relegated to Wolverine. He should have been in other films too. You really have an opportunity, Disney, now that you own everything. Like, Robert Meyer Burnett was talking about, set stuff up properly, put in the time. Well, put in the time with the X-Men, put in the time moving forward. Like, folks, I think you could really just skip phase 4. Black Widow's dead. It's a story from the past. Eternals, I don't personally do a lot of the Marvel cosmic stuff. Maybe the Jim Starlin stuff is my most, read cosmic stuff, but we've seen that with Thanos. Jim Starlin, I believe, created Thanos. Point being, phase 5 is where Marvel really kind of comes back. Now, phase 4 bombs out terribly. They're gonna scramble, and I don't know if that'll be a good thing, but it'll be interesting to.
Well, I think phase 4 was a little light because they knew they had the Netflix stuff to concentrate on a little bit. Plus, they also were kind of planning, I think, on Spider-Man, and of course, that did work out in the end for them. But I digress. There was a point there where everybody was like, well, we don't know if Spider-Man's coming back. And whether or not you like Spider-Man in the MCU or not, doesn't matter. They're doing well. And for the most part, the point is that they had that, plus they're letting the X-Men and Fantastic Four brew. They're not, like you said, I think Kevin Feige's taking the proper approach there. He's not just jumping out there and going, we're going to have an X-Men out by next year. You know what I mean? They're going to plan this. I think we're going to see X-Men characters start to pop up here and there in other things first before we actually get a proper X-Men movie. They're going to set that same thing with the Fantastic Four. I bet we'll see like Reed Richards and some other shit, other play, things like that. And I think hopefully, my fingers crossed, it'll be good. I don't know about this whole, the MCU going woke. I got to think that with some of the backtracking they've been doing on certain things like lately, that they kind of recognize that they fumbled a bit with Captain Marvel. And a lot of that seemed to be Iger pushing on and egging on that stuff. So I don't know.
Do you think Disney and Marvel Studios do you think they have the balls to do the political aspect of X-Men properly, or do you think they'll just brush over?
I think that Feige knows the X-Men well enough, and I think he loves them enough, and he worked on, I think, some of the earlier, if not most of the X-Men movies is in the background, did he not?
Yeah, under Laura Schuler-Donner.
Yeah, I was going to say. So, I mean, he's going to want to do something different. That we know. Hopefully he takes the right approach. The only thing that scares me right now is the rumblings I'm hearing is the name X-Men is not being allowed to be used in the office.
That won't work.
But that's just because they're being referred to as mutants. And it may just have to do more with just the politics in the office. Because as most people say, they can't imagine them trying to relaunch the X-Men without the actual name X-Men.
No,
because, what's the alternative? Just call them the mutants?
That would be dumb because there's a New Mutants film and there's New Mutants, Old Mutants, these mutants, those mutants. Nobody cares. Like you were referencing earlier about 80s franchises. I honestly think right now the 80s nostalgia train is coming to a stop. We'll get, another Stranger Things. We'll get a few more things, but I think 90s is what they're going to start gleaning from. And X-Men is probably the premier comic book of the 90s, the entire decade. People go, well, what about Spider-Man? What about Batman? Yeah, they were doing some cool stuff, the death of Superman, but like X-Men, I'm pretty sure was, I think X-Men #1, I believe, is the #1 selling issue of all time. Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, that first issue. And
I believe you're right. The relaunch of the X-Men, whatever, yeah.
And people might, what was it, 91, right?
Around 90, 91, 92. I mean, there was a stretch there from like 90 to about 1993, 94, where the X-Men was the top-selling comic book in the world. Not just in America, in the world.
Yeah, it was like outselling all the other top, 5 titles to put together or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, you had issues selling 200,000 copies. I mean, some of them.
It was insane.
That's how it was. It was. So I don't want to, and I don't want to hear about this whole thing about the comics industry is in decline. They're being happy that they're selling 20,000 copies of something. Bullshit. Okay. You give people good stories, they'll buy it.
You're in a renaissance right now, and I don't think that the comic book movie is going anywhere fast. And I think Joker really put a nail in a lot of that talk, because it showed that, even though as much whether you like the MCU or not, they tried a lot of things with like Winter Soldier and a few other films to make them not the same damn thing all over again. And they did try something a little different with the DCEU, whether you liked it or not, with the Zack Snyder stuff. So I'm not even going to weigh in on that right now. But point is, I think that the comic book movie is going to end up becoming like the Western. It's staying around for so damn long. Now, of course, one day it will probably go away, but I don't think it's going anytime soon. And the thing is you can continue to revamp and reshape and try new things. And hopefully we continue to get more things in the vein of Joker, to where they try to be more experimental. Now, I don't mean everything has to be dark, gritty, realistic, but I mean, get experimental. You know what I mean? Look at Guardians of the Galaxy is even kind of experimental for its time. And that's why the Marvel Universe really started borrowing a lot of that feeling, because it was, it was popular. But yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of different stories you could tell within that. I mean, like I said, Captain America, the First Avenger is a World War II story. Winter Soldier is a geopolitical thriller. Civil War is it's really Avengers 2.5, so. And there's, like I said, there's a lot.
Well, it's kind of Avengers versus Avengers, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but there's a lot of different types of stories you could tell within that medium. So you could tell a horror story, you could tell a psychedelic story like Doctor Strange. I mean, you could tell,
and New Mutants is going to kind of test that here. If maybe New Mutants will surprise everybody, because I'm confused. I don't know which cut they're using, but the original cut of that film, from what I heard, tested very well.
Yeah, I mean, if people always say there's too many jokes in Marvel movies, I'm like, well, you know what? Is there too many jokes in Marvel movies, or are comedies that bad? If Marvel really wants to make a straight up comedic movie, I mean, they'll get on Deadpool right away.
Well, and that's kind of what Guardians was. And I think there's an
Yeah.
argument to be made there. And I don't know how you feel about it, Jeff or Mecca, but I think Mecca agrees because we've talked about this before. But yeah, I think a big problem right now is that comedies suck. So just because there's a little bit of comedy and something else, it seems like too much. Well, that's what happens when you can't make fun of anything anymore, when all your comedies are stale and garbage. I mean, why do you think Bad Boys was probably something more refreshing than anybody's seen in a while? You know, because it was a comedy that people could go see and they could probably laugh. And I don't know. I haven't heard anything about having some woke agenda. I haven't heard anything about having some political message. All I've heard is that it's a lot like the first Bad Boys, you know, and that makes me happy.
Well, we'll talk about that on the podcast this week because Dion and Nick both went and saw it. So they're gonna...
I want to see it like soon. Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, don't apologize. Believe me, I want good entertainment and I want it to succeed. So I mean, you're not, you know, I don't think you're saying anything people don't want to hear.
Well, I mean, I can't comment on it whether or not it really is, but I've heard a lot of people. Yeah, we got a couple people in the chat already saying it's good. So,
oh, I will say this: on my flight to DC, I saw the new Shaft from 2019. That was a really good movie. Like I liked it so much that that's all I could think about that day. So if you had a chance to watch it or you haven't had a chance to watch it, I highly recommend it. I'll talk about it on the podcast this week proper. But like seriously, Shaft 2019, thumbs up from me. I really liked it.
That Shaft is a bad mother.
Shut your mouth.
I'm just talking about Shaft.
We can dig it. Dixon Sider says, "By grab Thor's hammer, I finally made a high council. Do I get a peanut? Party boob? Sure." Cider, anybody want a peanut?
Of all things, by grab Thor's hammer. My mom actually has Galaxy Quest in her Netflix queue, and she said, I said, "Oh, Tim Allen's. Oh, Tim Allen, he's really funny. I can't wait to watch it." she knows nothing about science fiction, but she heard Tim Allen, and she's looking forward to it.
When Drummer Boy D says Shaft, oh wait, yet another reboot. Actually, it wasn't.
Nope, not a reboot at all.
It's a sequel, yeah, to the 2004 or 2002.
Just 2000.
2000. That's right. You're sorry. Thank you. 2000 Shaft movie, which was a sequel to the last Shaft movie from whatever it was, 1974, somewhere in there.
Yeah, but this one actually
Shaft Goes to Africa, I think was the last one.
It ties into the original as well. Like you would think that it's going to be a reboot all about his son, but Samuel L. Jackson plays a huge part in the movie, and the kid that plays Shaft Jr. doesn't suck. You know, it's really, I think that movie kind of flopped with a lot of the modern critics because it shoots wokeness in the foot.
That's what I heard. I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen enough of it to know that.
Like, I think it's a very good example of like the old school coming back and showing it's still got it. Kind of like Die Hard 4 did.
I was gonna say what's sad is I think this was kind of the Beverly Hills Cop series we were gonna get to a point.
I'm glad we didn't though, because Shaft is a little different.
Yeah.
I think Axel Foley is just a one minute. You know, never mind. We'll talk about that off.
No, I agree. I would have been happier to just get the movie, yeah, because now it's going to be about him instead of his kid.
Cody Duffin, thank you very much. He says #kill Cecil. Well, I love Cecil. Cruising Through Time, thank you very much. He says, Jeff, love how you're basically a media terrorist. Yeah, Cruising Through Time. It's funny how they like to write me as this terrible guy. It's like, yeah, I don't fit your narrative, so let's just make up shit about me. But
it's pretty shitty.
Honestly, that kind of shit doesn't bother me though. The people that watch
it's dangerous though. It's kind of dangerous.
Oh, it is. I'm not saying that, but like the people that watch the channel and get what we do. The thing is, we grow all the time. People get it. They respect us. You know, I stand by what I say in the videos. You know, I'm proud of what I put out. Sometimes I'm sick, and so my voice sounds shitty. But overall, you know, I put the same thought and effort into these things, and I'm happy that you know, we're able to have the impact we have, all of us here. And so I think it scares certain people because we're that next evolution in like fan generated content. So Boag, excuse me, says the first 2 episodes of TC 2011 were great. The rest was a mess. I only saw like 1 episode with my friend Joel. So the Thundercats, whatever it was called, I do not recall it, man. Darian217, thank you very much for your generous super chat. Arthur Fleck highlights media hypocrisy as media cares about the rich businessmen, not the little average Joe like himself. Mirror, mirror, media cheers for $200 million movies and trashes the smaller budget films like Joker. I think that's an excellent point. I think they don't like what they see. They don't like the reflection. We watched a documentary about he's not a serial killer. He just killed one person, but he left some note about you don't like the reflection, you see in the mirror. That's the story of Joker right there. And I'm glad it succeeded in every way. It was good. It deserved what it did, and I hope it wins an Oscar. And I hope it goes on to be the highest regarded comic book movie of this era, because I love the Avengers a lot. They're
Speaking of shitty articles, did you see that one where it was like, we let Joker become a hit or some bullshit like that?
Oh, for crying out loud.
I don't remember how it was worded, but it was just like, really? What the...
If you see it, send it my way. I always am going to make videos about that shit. Joker, I actually have a lot to talk about with Joker, because it's probably the most interesting, like, the narrative around it. You hear they're trying to talk about Todd Phillips now, how he went behind the mother of the baby from The Hangover's back to do the scene where the kid, like, has the arm motion or whatever. Like, they're just trying anything to, like, make this guy look bad. Like, I get it. He made a movie that you didn't like and everybody bought it. Blame everybody. Whatever.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing, is we let Joker become a hit. Like
like I had something to do with it. That was me, everybody. Okay, blame me. I did it.
Well, no, they really mean, like, I hate saying it, but the leftist / Twitterati / this SJW. I hate making general terms about people.
I get what you're saying, though. Our friend Chapter Master Dante says, shout out to David Stewart's YouTube channel. He called Star Wars a secular religion. Disney is pissed that fans aren't giving them more money for the slop they are trying to feed us. Get well soon, all. Thank you. Party boob! David Stewart and I have talked off air a couple times. We've been trying to, get him on. Maybe I'll try to get him to come on the High Council in 2 weeks. I don't want to, if he's next week, he's available, I'll ask him. But yeah, you guys can shoot that out. I would love to have David Stewart on. I've watched a lot of his videos. It's been a while since I've watched them, but I think that guy is very interesting. I think it'd be very fun to have that discussion with him. So Chapter Master Dante, folks out there, if you'd like that, tweet at him, and I'll try to get in touch with him. Matt G, thank you very much. Just sends in $2, but we still appreciate it. Automata says, a JJ theme park? What's that going to be? Lens flares, the ride. Bet that park is going to have epilepsy warnings all over the damn thing. I can't even say it because I'm having an epilepsy fit trying to read the word. Excuse me. Breathing's important when you speak. I can barely do it. What would you guys ride the lens flare ride?
No.
I wouldn't go, but it is funny how the Disney theme park, that Rise of Resistance Star Wars ride, keeps breaking down. So.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the original Star Tours. I don't know if you know any history about that, but
I've been on the ride, but I don't know the history.
I've never ever been on it, but in the book recently about George Lucas, they talk about how they had this Millennium Falcon that was supposed to come down, and 3PO and R2 were supposed to come out, and the damn thing kept breaking down. So they just had it stationary on the final opening day. All this other crap. It was like nothing would work right. Like everything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong for him. It sounded like.
That's kind of disappointing. Modalicious, thank you very much. JJ ripped off Darkwing Duck for the end of Lost. I've never seen Lost, so I don't know, but I used to watch Darkwing Duck quite a bit. Do you guys know what that means?
No.
I have not seen it since I was a kid, so I'd have to see the actual show, but yeah.
Mako Rex, thank you very much. What bums me is that they have Timothy Zahn, but all they have him do is write Thrawn books. Zahn did more, like continue the story from Return of the Jedi better than JJ or RJ, and he gave us Mara Jade too. Well, Mako Rex, just they had all the tools and they failed to use them, so that's their fault.
Now, do you think that the rumors of George not liking Mara came from the fact that he didn't create her?
Very well could have been, but I mean, look where we are now with all these terrible characters. I can't imagine George Lucas likes the new prequel or the sequel era characters.
Like, how hard would it have been? That's what everybody really kind of wanted, I know, I get it. To a point, you don't want to do the exact same thing, but you still could have paid homage to what it was in a lot better way. You could have had Mara Jade and Luke be Rey's parents, and you could have done just little things to to really give the fans at least a little bit of what they wanted. You know, a little bit of fan service goes a long way when it's not bad. When it's done well. Look at Cobra Kai, like we said before, and all those other shows and stuff. If you do it well, you know.
I agree. Our friend Wanderer says, I feel the MCU will probably go where no superhero movie has gone before with Thor Love and Thunder, it being the first 70s style porno superhero movie.
Oh god, there was some fan art of Thor Love and Thunder where they've got a little heart in the hammer.
I can't wait to skip.
I mean, I'm not saying I wanted to bomb. I think we needed to bomb.
Well, it depends on what it is. I'm willing to give Taika Waititi I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's just being an ass and trolling everybody with a lot of stuff. And when we actually get to the movie itself, this whole business of her having the powers of Thor is just some little gimmick that's in just some small portion of the movie. Or like, obviously, if her and Thor are going to get married, she has to know what it's like to have the power of Thor for like a day. You know what I mean? Or Thor will try and transfer his power in some way to save her life or something like that, and it'll be After Effects because they'll pull a little bit from the comics. But the comic was so poorly received. I can't see Kevin Feige being blind to that and letting Waititi just go. And I trust him enough. I hope. If it's shit when it comes, I'll be the first one to say I was wrong, because I said the same thing about Joker, because I didn't like any of the trailers for Joker.
We got one guy on the Midnight's Edge Facebook group who keeps trying to defend that run. It's like, oh yeah, it's one of the best received runs of Thor in recently. I'm like, listen, I haven't read Thor in years, but I'm pretty sure it's not.
Even if the first trailer comes out and it looks like it's going to be super bad, then I'll say, yeah, I was wrong. I just want to give it the benefit of the doubt first before I prejudge it too much.
All right,
I'll prejudge it. It'll suck.
I know you like to prejudge.
How is 96-pound Natalie Portman going to save me? That's what I want to know.
Well, she'll nag you to death.
Are you going to get up? Do I have to come down there and rescue you again? Oh my God.
Look, all I'm going to say is this much. Kevin Feige was smart enough to make Infinity War more about something, anything more than about getting a piece of pussy. Okay. Cause let's face it, that's all the original Infinity War was really about.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
finally, our friend Cody Duffin says, watch Cecil's vid on his Indiegogo. I will. I'm going to go back. His book after I get off the air. So we have concluded another episode of the High Council. Folks, I'd like to thank each and everyone for watching. This was episode 85. So I guess 15 more weeks till episode 100. Woo! I guess we'll have a party. Maybe I'll see if Jeremy can come back. We'll have some fun with them. But Mecca, tell everybody where they can find you.
My channel is Mecca Random 42, and I can't even talk today. Just click me in the chat. You can find me. I think my Doctor Who video just got scheduled to go up. So, yay! I finally got around to reviewing 2 of the worst pieces of crap I've ever seen until Picard.
Tom, tell everyone where they can find you.
Well, you can see most of my work on Midnight's Edge, and we do a lot of live shows and stuff on Midnight's Edge After Dark. And you can find me all over the place. I'm generally popping up here and there and everywhere.
Tom, where can we find you? Or Rob, sorry, Rob.
I was like, you already asked him. Jeez.
I was like, am I in a time loop here?
I am.
Okay. Well, you can find me Midnight's Edge After Dark. You can find me occasionally on Mecca's channel. Listen, I'll go anywhere just about. You leave the door open. I'll probably wander into your kitchen, make a sandwich.
I was gonna say, you give him a sandwich, he'll show up.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I'm going to be over on the Mindless Entertainment stream. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. We talking about the Washington Post Star Wars stuff. Yeah, so we'll be on camera if you want to have some more fun tonight. We're not going anywhere. It's only 9:00 on Pacific time. So come over, join us. The link is in the chat. And bring your questions over there. I'll answer anything you guys want if you want to continue this conversation. So, folks, we got a bunch of videos that have come out over the last couple days. Make sure you check those out. We've been covering all the big topics. Next time, we're going after the Washington Post and eventually Scott Mendelson, our favorite former shill. Well, he might be a shill still. I don't know. The guy has a little bit of validity to some of his arguments, but we'll talk about that next time. So, folks, thank you for watching. I'll be back on Thursday night with World Class Bullshitters episode 203. And until next time. That's on the next show. Folks, be excellent to each other